Year 2020, the collapse begins. It started with a cough. What followed was devastation. An invisible enemy, an insidious, highly contagious disease known as the Schleck's virus, swept across the globe without warning. Within months, the death toll soared into the millions. Hospitals overflowed. Cities locked down. The world fell silent. Society shattered. People hid behind masks and fear. Schools, businesses, entire industries came to a screeching halt. The global economy plummeted into chaos. Even toilet paper, once mundane, became more precious than gold. Quarantine sparked panic. Streets emptied. Homes became prisons, and hopelessness crept into every corner of the planet. Still, humanity held onto one final thread of faith, a vaccine. And in 2021, that promise arrived. The world exhaled. But hope was short-lived. The Schleck's virus mutated. The vaccines failed. Worse, they accelerated the death toll. Immune systems collapsed. Riots ignited. Trust in governments disintegrated as leaders pleaded ignorance, citing a genetic anomaly they hadn't accounted for. New, unpredictable variants. But the people had heard enough lies. Patience turned to fury. Cities burned under the weight of betrayal. Despite the global outrage, science didn't stop. Work on a new solution continued, but it was too late to calm the masses. And just when humanity thought it couldn't fall any further, it did. The price of neglect. For decades, Earth had been suffocating beneath the weight of human ignorance. Climate change, pollution, and greed had pushed the planet past its breaking point. The air became poison, thick with sulfur and carbon monoxide. The once blue sky turned permanent yellow. Sunlight filtered through chemical clouds. Wild animals vanished. Crops failed. Forests became wastelands. Nature had been patient. Now it was retaliating. Humanity found itself caged inside concrete sanctuaries, breathing purified air, surviving on synthetic food. The dream of Mars was still centuries away. Hope, for many, was already dead. It was only through desperate innovation and the genius of a few that survival remained possible. And finally, miraculously, a working vaccine arrived. No side effects, no mutations. It brought normalcy, but not salvation. Masks came off indoors. Schools reopened. The economy stirred once more. Yet, Earth was changed forever. Its wounds ran too deep. The past became a fantasy, seen only in archived videos of blue skies, singing birds, and green, living Earth. A world now lost. Year 2142, a new dream. Then came a spark of wonder. A revolutionary tech company called New Era announced the impossible, a full-dive VR experience unlike anything before. A game simply titled Rebirth. It wasn't just a game, it was an escape. Set in a vibrant, unspoiled world of magic, swordsmanship, and breathtaking nature, Rebirth allowed players to live in a version of Earth humanity could only remember in dreams. Fully immersive, simulating all five senses, it offered solace and fantasy in a world that had lost both. Though still limited, no true MMORPG yet, only co-op, PvP, and a robust single-player campaign. Rebirth promised more, a future expansion that would bring the world together in one massive, persistent digital universe. Within an hour of release, it shattered sales records. For the first time in over a century, the world united, not through war or tragedy, but wonder. The flawed paradise. Of course, it wasn't perfect. The early version had bugs, some humorous, others game-breaking. Visual fidelity, though stunning, wasn't indistinguishable from reality. There were latency delays in smell and taste, glitches in combat animations, and restrictive zone walls that shattered immersion. But none of that mattered. It was real enough. In a world where the sky had turned sickly yellow, where forests were myths and animals lived only in documentaries, Rebirth gave people something more than escape. It gave them a second chance, a rebirth of hope. And for one man, it would become something far more than a game. A new life, a darker path, an awakening that would change everything. Beneath a clear, star-studded night sky, A small glowing object zipped across the firmament, barely noticeable to anyone below. Yet to one figure darting across the rooftops of a bustling city, it felt like an omen. Down below, the streets were alive with chaos and indulgence. Firelit stalls, drunken laughter, strippers flaunting their charm for coin, armored guards pacing like hawks waiting to pounce, and beggars clutching bowls in trembling hands. All of it framed in shadows, rendered vividly in red-tinted hues through the man's enhanced vision. Clad entirely in black, his pale, ghost-like face exposed to the cold wind, the figure leapt effortlessly from rooftop to rooftop. Short, snow-white hair danced behind him, and his crimson eyes glimmered like twin rubies in the dark. Despite the chill, sweat beaded down his face. His heart pounded, his fangs clenched. His timer was running out. "Stop right there, criminal scum. No one breaks the law on my watch." A guard's deep voice echoed from the street below, flat, rehearsed, and dangerously familiar. Shit, they spotted me. Panic surged. His plan was crumbling. This wasn't just any run, it was the run. Years of preparation, practice, and heartbreak funneled into this singular moment. There was no room for failure. Not now. Not when I'm this close. North. He's heading north. More voices. More footsteps. Metal boots pounding stone. He needed more speed. He needed every bit of juice he had left. Wind Walker. Haste. His body flared with a red and green aura, blood and mana draining rapidly. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, speeding across the rooftops like a blur, moving with the practiced grace of someone who had done this thousands of times. Stop! In the name of the law! The guards chanted robotically behind him. He ignored them, tuned them out like ambient noise. His eyes narrowed. Almost there. Then he saw it. A small, dimly lit pub nestled between stone buildings. A few drunk men laughed at a table out back, dressed in tattered peasant garb. But his focus locked onto a very different man. Pants unzipped, swaying where he stood, red-faced, and relieving himself against the wall near the back door. Perfect. He spawned. Without hesitation, the white-haired man dropped from the rooftop, landing silently behind the pub. No one noticed. Not the piss-soaked NPC. Not the group of ale-slamming drunks. Not even the guards, still scrambling somewhere behind. He turned, faced the wall, aligned himself precisely with a moss-covered crack. Then he began sprinting into it, again and again, like a lunatic slamming his head against a brick wall. A few feet away, the peeing man hummed. Behind him, the drunk spoke casually. "Did you hear? King Reinhardt's army got wiped out." "What? No survivors." "None. Bruma Hills cursed. Some say it was midnight." He didn't care. Not about the war. Not about midnight. Not about the lore. Only the run mattered. "Guards! He's here!" He flinched. Spotted red and silver armor flashing around the corner. Blades drawn. Less than 100 meters. Come on, come on. Piss faster, damn it. That damn Serena. She's been mouthy again. Might have to set her straight. The urinating man finished. Zipped up. Reached for the door. Please. The guards were nearly on him. Submit or perish. The sword came down, but fate was on his side. With drunken force, the NPC slammed open the pub door, just as the blade descended. And like a ghost, the white-haired man vanished. Clipped through the world. Phased into the floor. Gone. Huh? Must have been the wind. The guards looked around, dumbfounded. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city, surrounded by endless void, Ren Silver, the man, the myth, the world's #1 streamer, cheered wildly as he tumbled through nothingness. "Leads Gugu. Yep, baby. SUB6 baby. That's what I've been grinding for." He pumped his fists, shaking with adrenaline. Ding, ding, ding. $10,000 donation from Biggest_Ticus. Sub 6. You beat your own world record run. This will never be topped. $1,000 from Erectile_Reptile. Bro, that clip was filthy. Insane timing. Goat. Ren laughed breathlessly, skimming through the wall of donations and chat spam flooding his interface. His hands trembled. This was it. His perfect run. The pissing NPC only spawned 25% of the time. Getting him was a gamble. getting the timing and position right. Near impossible. Aliard on top of that. Legendary. And now, as he floated through the game's kill plane, the credits rolled. A soft orchestral score played. Developer names faded in and out. He muted the game. Chat exploded. Poggers. That skip was nasty. Ren is him. Can't believe it actually worked. Then the system message appeared. Congratulations, player. You have completed all main and side content. You are the true savior of the world for now. Final time, 5 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. New world record. Hidden quest complete. Undisputed champion. And then, on behalf of New Era Studios, we're thrilled to offer you Ren Silver, the #1 player in the world, exclusive early access to our long-awaited, game-changing next update. Accept, decline. Ren stared at the glowing prompt and grinned. Let's make history again.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Ren's chat of 200,000 went wild seeing the notification pop up on his screen. The frenzy so insane that the chat was moving down so fast that even the shortest, most simple messages could not be read. Yet, the person most bewildered of all was Ren himself, his eyes wide open and his body shaking like crazy, as if the best day of his life had only gotten even better. Shit, this can't be real. It must be a troll or some kind of virus, right? He laughed and mumbled to himself, only to look at the chat screen to his right that was still completely unreadable. Fuck, I don't even know what to say. If any of the devs are in chat, I just want to thank you so much and say that I'm so honored to receive this. It's been a long journey to get to where I'm at, but I would have never been here if it weren't for everyone's support. So let's fucking do this. With no hesitation, Ren lifted his hands and stared at his two options once more, clicking the only option he could possibly pick. Accept. Are you sure you would like to accept? Please read the terms and conditions below. If you accept, you must promise confidentiality. You will not be allowed to stream any of the new content provided in this update until it launches to the public. This will also include discussing any major changes provided. Please click here to read more about our terms and conditions. Do you accept all the terms and conditions? Accept, decline. Shit, sorry guys. It seems like I won't be streaming this. But I guess I'll just have fun by myself. Huh, losers. Ren laughed heartily at his chat that seemed to not take it personal or bad at all. Leak it. Leak it. Leak it. Come on, man. Don't be a dick about it. You could at least show us a little bit of the good stuff. Winky face. You've always been a savage. Don't be a pussy. Fucking leak the content. You're called balls for a reason. Of course, Ren had no idea what his fast-moving chat was saying, yet deep down he knew exactly what they were thinking as he smiled and spoke. FBI might be knocking on my door if I leak this. But fuck it. I'll consider it after I see what it's all about. No way I'm streaming it, though. He chuckled once more, casually hitting the accept button with the hands of his game character. You're all set. The update is currently installing onto your VR machine. Time remaining, 25 minutes. There was nothing in the emptiness of the void other than his floating body and that simple timer as it slowly ticked down. Time remaining, 24 minutes, 56 seconds. Well, guys, I guess I kind of have to end the stream here. I've been live for almost 14 hours now, just grinding away at the game, and I can't really be playing this much when it's updating now, can I? He took a pause to softly chuckle at his own words before he took a deep breath and continued in a more serious tone. I would like to thank all of you for showing up for the stream. You legit just witnessed history being made live. But this is only the beginning. The launch of the next major update that we were all promised years ago is almost upon us, and your boy will have an early advantage on everyone else. So, we will rule it as well. Our reign of supremacy will not fall. I would once again like to show my appreciation to every single one of you. I would not be here without you, and it truly means more to me than you think. And on that note, I'll be ending the stream and enjoying the new update all by myself. See ya. Click. After ending the stream, Ren's face completely changed as he took a deep breath and thought profoundly in his mind, making a menu show up, clicking the final option written on it, directly below game settings. Log out. Owner, Ren Silver, has returned back to reality. Welcome back. As soon as he clicked the button, he was immediately thrust back staring at something all too familiar, looking at the thick black glass of his premium VR helmet, leisurely taking it off and slowly setting it on the metal table ahead of him, noticing a countdown right on its screen directly matching that of the update. With a mellow smile, he leant back on his chair, looking around his dark, completely white, fairly small and lightly furnished apartment that was slightly more futuristic than the average house at the time. His high-tech gas mask hung to the side of his front door, just in case he wanted to go outside, an artificial oxygen machine that allowed there to be air in his home, and a particularly messy desk in the corner that he had never bothered to clean up since he quit his last job. Many would not think it fit for the house of a millionaire and the biggest, most popular streamer on Jitter, the largest streaming site in the world. However, he could not care less about such comments. A moderate lifestyle was all he really ever wanted. His gaze eventually fell on his curtains that had shreds of dim, yellow, polluted light coming through it. Morning already, huh? He had 25 minutes of time to burn until the update finished, and he needed to spend his time doing something productive other than a nap, which he was sure would take him out for at least a few hours. He was unsure of what to do until the answer hit him in the face, or more like in the nose. He slowly lifted his tired, sweaty body and immediately went to take a shower, not before smiling at a certain picture, 1/3 of it clearly ripped, feeling a mixture of emotions looking at it before he shook his head and entered the shower with his new clothes in hand, throwing all of his sweaty attire in a basket at the corner of his bathroom before he casually strolled in front of the mirror in an extremely good mood unlike he had ever felt in years. There he saw his own reflection, the face of a somewhat above average, clean-shaven, well-kempt man that looked no older than an average college student. He was not skinny and not fat, yet leaning closer towards the skinny side. His smooth black hair fell down slightly past his reddish hazel eyes that almost seemed to glow on his clear, pale face that was quite a common thing due to the lack of sunlight outdoors. Still, even amongst most people, his face was particularly pale, which that, along with other things, earned him the nickname Vampire that he eventually began to embrace as he grew up. Although he stayed home 99% of the time, absolutely hated and adamantly avoided human interaction, he was definitely a man that took good care of his image. It was either from habit from his previous job or because he was forced to show his face every day on stream to millions of people and needed to look presentable. Even he was unsure which one influenced his behavior more. As he was looking deeply into his reflection, he noticed odd redness under his slightly watery eyes, a sight he had never seen in a long time. Was I crying? Fuck, did I cry on stream? He had not shed a single tear in years, ever since that fateful day, so why was he doing it now? Although, unlike the last time, these were tears of joy instead. Was he that happy for what he had accomplished today? He had no idea. Yet, what he was certain of was that he had never felt such warmth and sense of accomplishment in years. If only his dad was there to see it too. Immediately, Ren shook his head and entered the shower bare naked, standing tall at 5 feet 11 inches as he turned on the shower and stared up at the ceiling, cold droplets of water falling on his smiling face, seemingly unfazed by the rather refreshing coldness as he let his mind drift in peace. However, not even 5 minutes later, his peace was abruptly ended by the ringing of the phone that he did not expect, making him quickly come out of the shower, but naked as he quickly grabbed the phone and answered in his natural, deep voice. "Who is it?" There were slight noises of static on his phone before another voice was heard, one sounding like the tender love and care of an old woman. "Oh, my sweet little Ren. You actually picked up. I just called to congratulate you on your new achievement. You were all over the news. Shut the fuck up. Sweetie, how the fuck did you even get this number? I told you to never call me again. You fucking bitch. I know exactly what you fucking want. And you're not getting shit from me." Hearing that person's voice suddenly clicked something odd in Ren's head, his mood and expression shifting a complete 180 degrees. "Oh no, sweetie, it's not WH. Shut your damn mouth, slut. You're lucky I even pay for your sorry ass living expenses. but that's way more than you fucking deserve. Lucky for you, unlike someone else I know, I'm not heartless enough to leave my bitch-ass mother living on the streets. But honey, you're rich and you don't even use any of your money. But that's not what I wanted to call you for. I really just... Shut up. Shut up. And don't fucking call me again. You're completely dead to me. You fucking witch. Beep. Ren shut off his phone and placed it back on the table, something that he knew he should have done a long time ago. If anyone else he did not like had called him, he would have simply shut the phone in their face. However, his mother incited a completely different reaction from him every time, like a primal instinct completely overcoming his body, one that he could not stop no matter how hard he tried. His hatred for her was, as such, almost unquantifiable. If anything, his outburst towards her just now was not as severe as all the other times, which was probably due to his previously good mood. He knew exactly why she called him as soon as the news arose, and it was not at all for a good reason. She just tried to pounce on any opportunity she could, and what better time than when her son made the front page of all worldwide news? Arg. He tried to calm himself down, putting his hands on his wet face, heavily breathing, a serious look in his eyes that were hidden under his pitch-black hair. He was in such a good mood only a few seconds prior, but now that joy was ripped away and replaced by all memories and torture he had experienced. Beep. Update complete. Rebirth is now once again ready to play. In his moment of grief, the sound of his VR helmet rang in his ears, notifying him that the update he had been waiting for had finally finished. I can't let this bother me. Today is a good day. Maybe playing the new update will cheer me up again. I'll be the world's first after all. Ren mumbled to himself, a small smile appearing on his face as he had never been so excited about something like this in many, many years. Playing video games, especially Rebirth, was the time he felt the happiest and freest. It was a time where he could finally forget the pain of his earthly life and become something different. NPCs were far greater than humans could ever be anyways. At least they couldn't actually hurt him. They were programmed, loyal, and would never betray unless scripted to. All that he knew about the update was that it was going to make the game even more realistic. They were going to remove all invisible walls, and that it would possibly take place in a new region. Everything else was completely unknown. His body, still dripping water, a small puddle forming under his feet. He walked over towards his VR helmet, still completely naked, forming small footprints on the cold, wooden floor, picking up the black and red helmet with his two soaking wet hands. He knew that the VR helmets were all waterproof, and he simply could not wait any longer to dry his body and wear new clothes. He was too excited to waste any time, like his body did not allow him to do anything else. Plus, playing naked might somehow be more refreshing, and now was as good a time as any other to test it out. He took a moment of pause, staring eagerly at the helmet in his shaky hands, taking a deep breath before promptly putting it on his head, making sure it was secured before he turned it on. Power on. 10%, 34%, 69%, 100%. Boot up complete. Suddenly, just like he always saw, he was thrust into a white void with absolutely nobody, numbers flowing down his entire vision before another pop-up emerged. Please select a game to play. If you wish to go to the store or settings, simply cancel this window. Ren answered by simply thinking of the name in his mind. Rebirth. He directly skipped the starting menu that appeared to not change and went immediately into a new game file, as it seemed like everything else had been completely deleted, which made sense in his mind. New game. Before you commence your new journey, would you like to use your own character that you already created prior? Note, the new update did not provide any new races or customization options. Ren ignored the rather odd notification and chose the obvious answer. His faithful vampire race had never once let him down. Not only was it one of the most overpowered races in the entire game, he felt some sort of connection to it, almost like it was his spirit animal. It was the same insult that had been thrown at him his entire life, and he had now more than fully embraced it. Plus, he wanted to see how it would stack up with all the new possible changes. Old character build. Vampire. Beneath a clear, star-studded night sky, A small glowing object zipped across the firmament, barely noticeable to anyone below. Yet to one figure darting across the rooftops of a bustling city, it felt like an omen. Down below, the streets were alive with chaos and indulgence. Firelit stalls, drunken laughter, strippers flaunting their charm for coin, armored guards pacing like hawks waiting to pounce, and beggars clutching bowls in trembling hands. All of it framed in shadows, rendered vividly in red-tinted hues through the man's enhanced vision. Clad entirely in black, his pale, ghost-like face exposed to the cold wind, the figure leapt effortlessly from rooftop to rooftop. Short, snow-white hair danced behind him, and his crimson eyes glimmered like twin rubies in the dark. Despite the chill, sweat beaded down his face. His heart pounded, his fangs clenched. His timer was running out. "Stop right there, criminal scum. No one breaks the law on my watch." A guard's deep voice echoed from the street below, flat, rehearsed, and dangerously familiar. Shit, they spotted me. Panic surged. His plan was crumbling. This wasn't just any run, it was the run. Years of preparation, practice, and heartbreak funneled into this singular moment. There was no room for failure. Not now. Not when I'm this close. North. He's heading north. More voices. More footsteps. Metal boots pounding stone. He needed more speed. He needed every bit of juice he had left. Wind Walker. Haste. His body flared with a red and green aura, blood and mana draining rapidly. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, speeding across the rooftops like a blur, moving with the practiced grace of someone who had done this thousands of times. "Stop! In the name of the law!" The guards chanted robotically behind him. He ignored them, tuned them out like ambient noise. His eyes narrowed. Almost there. Then he saw it. A small, dimly lit pub nestled between stone buildings. A few drunk men laughed at a table out back, dressed in tattered peasant garb. But his focus locked onto a very different man. Pants unzipped, swaying where he stood, red-faced, and relieving himself against the wall near the back door. Perfect. He spawned. Without hesitation, the white-haired man dropped from the rooftop, landing silently behind the pub. No one noticed. Not the piss-soaked NPC. Not the group of ale-slamming drunks. Not even the guards, still scrambling somewhere behind. He turned, faced the wall, aligned himself precisely with a moss-covered crack. Then he began sprinting into it, again and again, like a lunatic slamming his head against a brick wall. A few feet away, the peeing man hummed. Behind him, the drunk spoke casually. "Did you hear? King Reinhardt's army got wiped out." "What? No survivors." "None. Bruma Hills cursed. Some say it was midnight." He didn't care. Not about the war. Not about midnight. Not about the lore. Only the run mattered. "Guards! He's here!" He flinched. Spotted red and silver armor flashing around the corner. Blades drawn. Less than 100 meters. Come on, come on. Piss faster, damn it. That damn Serena. She's been mouthy again. Might have to set her straight. The urinating man finished. Zipped up. Reached for the door. Please. The guards were nearly on him. Submit or perish. The sword came down, but fate was on his side. With drunken force, the NPC slammed open the pub door, just as the blade descended. And like a ghost, the white-haired man vanished. Clipped through the world. Phased into the floor. Gone. Huh? Must have been the wind. The guards looked around, dumbfounded. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city, surrounded by endless void, Ren Silver, the man, the myth, the world's #1 streamer, cheered wildly as he tumbled through nothingness. "Leeds Gugu. Yep, baby. SUB6, baby. That's what I've been grinding for." He pumped his fists, shaking with adrenaline. Ding, ding, ding. $10,000 donation from Biggest_Dicus. Sub 6. You beat your own world record run. This will never be topped. $1,000 from Erectal_Reptile. Bruh, that clip was filthy. Insane timing. Goat. Ren laughed breathlessly, skimming through the wall of donations and chat spam flooding his interface. His hands trembled. This was it. His perfect run. The pissing NPC only spawned 25% of the time. Getting him was a gamble. getting the timing and position right. Near impossible. Aliard on top of that. Legendary. And now, as he floated through the game's kill plane, the credits rolled. A soft orchestral score played. Developer names faded in and out. He muted the game. Chat exploded. Poggers. That skip was nasty. Ren is him. Can't believe it actually worked. Then the system message appeared. Congratulations, player. You have completed all main and side content. You are the true savior of the world for now. Final time, 5 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. New world record. Hidden quest complete. Undisputed champion. And then, on behalf of New Era Studios, we're thrilled to offer you Ren Silver, the #1 player in the world, exclusive early access to our long-awaited, game-changing next update. Accept, decline. Ren stared at the glowing prompt and grinned. Let's make history again. It's there, he thought to himself, looking at his character sheet with a strange feeling in his heart. A feeling of both comfort and disappointment that he was still in the game and had not transferred into a new world like in fantasy, which might have seemed fun in theory, but extremely dangerous the more he thought about it. It seems that the technology had really advanced this much. This is insane. I bet everyone else would be so jealous if I revealed this, he thought with a smirk, taking another deep breath of bliss. Ren then immediately started reading his stat sheet to see if there were any changes added in the new update, until his eyes landed on his name, which made him inwardly chuckle and cringe, almost instinctively covering his face. Balls Deep 69. He had made the account when the game had recently come out, and at that time, he was only a little kid. And by the time he became mature enough to realize how bad his name was, it was already too late. The developers gave no way for the players to change their usernames, and by the time he wanted to change his name, he had already accomplished too much on that account for him to simply abandon it. Thus, he was reluctantly stuck with it for the duration of his time playing. However, in his case, it ended up being kind of a good thing since it had become a massive meme in his community and was probably part of the reason for his massive, widespread growth and success. Ignoring that part of his character window, like it never even existed, he continued to examine the rest of his stats, his eyes moving from top to bottom as he mumbled to himself. Everything so far seems to be in order. Oh, lore balls, you're finally awake. Welcome back. Oh, what the hell? Who are you? Lore balls? You don't recognize me? It's me. Luck, Ren blurted out, caught entirely off guard by what he was seeing in front of him, a creature that was all too familiar to him, yet moving in totally different ways than what he was usually programmed. A small, slightly glowing figure around the size of a middle finger. His short, deep, purple hair slightly spiked. His eyes that were a mystical uniform color matched his hair and complemented the soft, almost feminine-like features of his yellow, slightly glowing face. He flapped his almost see-through matching purple fairy wings in the air wearing absolutely no clothes, his private parts fully missing from where a normal person would usually have them. It was a custom fairy NPC that he always created on every playthrough of the game he had ever done, one that proved to be extremely useful every time, yet not one that he expected to see in his new playthrough of the game. Lore balls, I'm so happy you're finally awake. I was so worried about you. His voice completely caught Ren off guard. Firstly, he usually had all of his party members on mute. That was if he had any, so he didn't have to listen to their ramblings and pre-programmed voice lines over and over. And secondly, he had never heard an NPC ever refer to him by name. It was always hero, traveler, young wizard, etc., but never specifically by name. Damn, they must have really updated the AI. He sounds so good. And why is Luck here? I thought I started a new game. Is this the new starting cutscene? Did they put my own custom character in the game as an homage to me? Ren couldn't really contain his excitement, a clear look of joy on his face. Lore balls? Are you okay? Can you talk to me? You've been asleep for 2 days. I was so worried about you. But don't worry. I made myself useful while you were asleep. Luck's tone was very joyous and worried at the same time, the emotions on his face very expressive, which made Ren inwardly nod, taking in everything, not speaking a single word back at the NPC ahead of him. Lord Balls. Can you please stop calling me Lord Balls? Ren blurted on instinct before sighing to himself, as it was just as effective as talking to a brick wall, thinking nothing of it as an NPC wouldn't be able to respond to such a command. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you rather me call you by your full name? Lord Balls Deep 69. No, that's even worse. He instinctively responded once more, before taking a step back as he came to a sudden realization. He responded? What? He responded? Usually, NPCs only respond to very direct commands, or prompts given by the game to tell the player to say what he needed to say, like multiple choice. This was the first time he had seen such a thing. Did they program realistic AI in the game, just like in all those novels and anime? Can I now have a full-on conversation with an NPC? He felt his excitement well up. Even more, everything seemed almost too good to be true, him not sure how the developers could allow such realism in the game. So, Lord, what would you rather me call you? Ren's eyes grew wide with a massive smile on his face. He finally had the chance to change his own name. He had thought, no, more like fantasied about it many times, about a cool, fitting vampire name to call himself, but simply never received the chance to use it. And after years of contemplating, he had ultimately narrowed it down to one simple name. Aliard. Call me Aliard. Lux's slightly worried and confused face looked up brighter than ever. Aliard. Lord Aliard. I like that. I like the new name Lord. I was worried that you were going through an identity crisis. Ren ignored the part about the identity crisis as he felt a great sense of pride now being referred to as Aliard, which was his favorite character in all vampire media and somewhat of a role model to him in some sick, distorted way. So, look, what can you tell me about where I am now? You said I've been asleep for 2 days, right? You must have done some sort of exploring, right? You also said you got some work done too. It felt somewhat odd talking to an NPC, yet the fascination of a new update got the best of him as he wanted to test the limits of this new AI. To be completely honest, I have absolutely no idea where we are and how we even got here. All I remember is that you and I have been on many adventures together, and I feel some sort of loyalty to you that not even I'm fully sure of. I did do some exploring, but I wasn't able to go far since the nearby village was being raided by mercenaries or bandits, so I was only able to explore the nearby forest ahead. Amnesia, a classic start to any new tale. Oh, and a village raided. Noted, maybe a side quest. Might even be part of the main quest too. In the game, there was no proper quest or notification when a player was told something, so it was up to them to keep track of anything important said to them. And what did you make yourself busy with? Oh, here, come outside. I spent the last 2 days retrieving good armor pieces from the bandits and soldiers that fought for the village a few days ago. They are very heavy for someone small like me, so it took a really long time to do it. I hope you like it. Lux seemed to be holding in his excitement, like he was proud of what he had accomplished as he flapped his wings and flew out of the cave with haste, Ren following suit, making sure to avoid any spikes or pebbles protruding out of the ground as he learned his lesson the previous time. As he exited the cave, the light of the moon fell down on his face. The fresh wind breeze hit his face once more, the slushy feeling and texture of the mud under his feet entirely different from the previous rocky ground, as he could not help but stare at the forest ahead of him with complete awe and fascination, almost like it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his life. A scene so real and majestic that he only imagined it in his dreams, almost shedding a tear from its sheer beauty. Wow, Ren had never in his life felt freer as he, in his still naked body, stared at the forest ahead, taking the best, deepest breath of his life, his addiction seemingly never going to end as he was quite literally high on air. He was stood at the entrance of a seemingly endless forest that spanned far as his dark vision eyes could see. The heavily swaying trees affected by the howling wind were of completely foreign, unknown origin to him, noticing 3 or 4 different species that looked somewhat similar and distinct in their own ways. The vegetation was rather compact and shot out high up into the illuminated pitch-black sky, enabling cascading light from the bright moon to bounce between the rich green leaves. This allowed for a variety of saplings to flourish in the thick layer of leaves below, where several types of plants and flowers grew. On top of that, what sold the beauty of the scene even more was a massive hill in the distance with a waterfall protruding from it, the sounds of the water crashing clear to his ears despite the massive distance. Yet, despite all the beauty and grandeur, he could not help but notice patches of burnt trees and greenery that, along with an odd, rather disgusting stench coming from somewhere close to him that he had only just noticed, yet did not demean or take away from his experience at all. "Lord Aliard, come here." Suddenly, his moment of pure bliss and freedom was interrupted by a small, almost childlike sound, making him turn around only to see Luck once again, hovering over a set of rather disgusting, bloody leather armor and daggers laid directly beside a black rock not too far from where he was standing. "Come here. It took me a while to get it here. I hope that you like it." Ren did feel slightly annoyed to be snapped back to reality so quickly. Yet, he didn't let that bother him for long, as he knew he had to move on and explore the rest of the world unknown that he was certain looked even better, especially the cities with all the new NPC AI. It was a general rule of thumb that the beginning areas in any video game were usually the most bland and boring. Ren deeply sighed before shaking his head, walking on the leafy and muddy ground of the forest towards Luck and the set of leather armor he was flying over, the rather disgusting smell getting closer and closer the more he neared him. "Luck, mind if I ask what this smell is?" He looked at his master with a hint of confusion and spoke. "Well, like I said, I looted it from many dead bodies around the forest. You're probably smelling the smell of blood." The second Luck responded to him, it was almost like something clicked in his brain. Of course, vampires were creatures that adored blood, but the older the blood became, the more disgusting it smelled and tasted. However, that part had only been mentioned in the game's lore and did not have any game-changing impacts other than the benefits of old blood being less effective for vampires. But now, with these realistic enhancements, that part of the lore had become real. I see, makes sense." He nodded towards Luck, picking up the pieces of black, slightly tattered and bloody armor that lacked a helmet and seemingly gave absolutely no stats, finding it hard to put it on as he held his breath from the stench of death around him. "Much better," he spoke as he began stretching in his armor, the smell only seeming to get stronger. "Inspect party member." Ren raised an eyebrow at the sight ahead of his inspect skill not working on his party member, which made him assume that it was probably locked until another level. He wanted to check if Luck knew a specific spell that could end his misery, but now it seemed like he simply had to ask. "Luck, could you use Purification on this armor? The smell is killing me." Really? I picked the most bloody armor on purpose because I thought you vampires liked it." "That's only fresh blood. Old blood is disgusting." "I apologize, Lord Aliard. It shall be purified immediately." Without a second of hesitation, Luck flew all around him, flapping his wings that sprayed down small sparkles of light that went around and cleaned his armor along with the disgusting smell surrounding him. Much better. The addicting smell of wildlife and fresh air once again entered his nostrils unhindered by that disgusting stench. "Luck, what's the status of the forest? Will I be able to find any beasts there?" "From what I've seen, the forest is extremely empty due to the attack on the nearby village. You might be able to find a few basic beasts, but that will be quite rare. It's good for us, since we don't really know the strength of the beasts in the area. So, I think it would be best for us to get out of the forest and get to a city where we could learn more about where we are now. But this is only the starting area. The beasts here should only be level 1. No way the devs would add strong beasts from the start. Oh, or is this some sort of stealth mission? That would also make sense." Ren began mumbling to himself, his voice slightly louder than he expected. "Level 1? Devs? Stealth mission?" Luck questioned with a look filled with great confusion, which made Ren chuckle, as it seemed like such terms were not familiar to the AI, which made sense to him considering that it might have ruined the already beyond amazing immersion embedded in the new update. "Never mind, let's go. Do you know the way out of the forest?" "Yes." Luck nodded. "I believe I spotted a path slightly up ahead. It should not be too far." I'll try to navigate us away from any of the dead bodies of the old fleeing humans, since those are the areas that probably have the most beasts that will be trying to feed on Thea's corpse. Let's go. Luck promptly flew into the forest, the light around his body becoming dimmer, most likely to not attract any attention his way. Ren following directly behind him, feeling far more sluggish and fatigued than usual, wearing the rather heavy leather armor, yet still feeling good from the cold wind breeze slamming on his face, the fresh air entering his nostrils, and the bright moon shining down on him through the thick leaves of the high trees. This damn armor. I was never this slow, even as a level 1. And did they patch the infinite sprint glitch? Fuck. Ren inwardly cursed, as he struggled to keep up with Luck despite his rather meticulous movements around the forest that he had honed through many years of practice, avoiding sticks and large clumps of leaves that would make the most sound. Asterisk pant, even in the full moon, I'm still this bad. I bet I'd be dead by now from overexhaustion if I were a human. Damn, vampires are so OP. He inwardly smiled with a slightly mad chuckle, still struggling to keep up, looking to his left at the edge of a deep cliff that led to a wide, expansive plain. Although in PvP this advantage, of course, did not exist. In PvE, player versus environment, Rebirth allowed the user to skip days by doing some specific tasks, such as sleeping in certain beds. And that was what made vampires so unbelievably overpowered. This pretty much rendered their only major weakness, the sun, almost completely futile, as players would immediately be able to skip to nighttime all the time. And not just that, but skip to a night with the full moon where they would be even stronger. Most quests and side quests did not get affected by the passing of days, and there were only a few scripted scenes and quests that required the user to be in broad daylight. It was something that was never patched in the game, making vampires the best race that only a few others could even compare to. As he was running, he managed to pick up on something in the plains beyond the cliff, shrouded in darkness and ash, the vegetation around it completely dead, burnt to the ground. The various buildings he managed to pick up on with his rather good vampiric vision utterly broken down, and some still on fire, small figures walking around, some in what seemed like shackles as he watched groups of them, some all at once, and some, one by one, fall dead on the ground. Part of him knew that what he was seeing was most likely a scripted cutscene to show the destroyed village that Luck talked about, and that it would be nice if he were to just navigate his way down the cliff to see if he could go there, and if there was any Easter egg he could receive. After all, he was simply in a game and has nothing to lose. If he died, he would simply respawn at another checkpoint or save state. Right now was merely a test run where he could do and test whatever he wanted with absolutely no consequences before he started a proper playthrough later on with all of his new knowledge. A time where he could really let loose and have fun. However, on the other hand, another part of him felt scared looking at that village. True fear, like only death and pain lied in there. A feeling that he never imagined he would feel in a video game. Maybe the new senses of realism were starting to get in his head. The game usually did a good job of separating the walls of game and reality, but the more he played, the more those walls became thinner. Arg. He shook his head from those thoughts, completely disregarding them. In the end, deciding to go with his gut and not check the possibility of the Easter egg and leave it for another time. Hey, Luck, do you still think that there are bad guys from that village roaming in this forest? Ren whispered, panting, almost out of breath. No, my lord. I'm fairly sure they rounded up all of their targets already. We should be more than safe. The main road is up ahead. It shouldn't be too long. He whispered back, leading to Ren nodding back to his words. As Ren continued sprinting in the forest, he couldn't help but think that this first mission was too easy and that there had to be more before, suddenly, his suspicions were proven true as he heard a loud howl coming from the direction ahead of them, in a small clearing, making them both stop mere meters away from the beast ahead. Shoot! Why now, Wolf? The road is right there. Maybe we should try and run. We have no idea how strong that thing is. Luck cursed his bad luck, looking back at his smiling master that was slowly stretching his rather tired body, knowing full well he can't flee. There stood a massive black and blue wolf, its sharp fangs out, a yellow glow in its eyes and foam running down from its mouth like it was ready to pounce. A new beast. This must be the tutorial mini-boss. Let's see how fighting works now. Tutorial? Mini-bow. Luck. Go distract him. Make sure he doesn't come close to me. I have a plan. Yes, sir. With no hesitation, Luck obeyed orders and raced towards the wolf, grabbing its attention by flashing a bright light in its eyes before flying around it, a known taunt move that Renew Luck possessed even at level 1. With a wide smile on his face, Ren brought his hands together and focused his mind, trying to cast a magic spell. What? Suddenly, he felt an unknown, almost unbelievable energy flow all around his body, empowering and rejuvenating him unlike ever before. Like he had the power of the entire world right before his fingertips. He felt almost unstoppable. With an even wider smile on his face, he noticed heat being formed between his fingers that eventually turned into a yellow, then orange, then finally a bright crimson flame, lifting his hands and aiming straight at both Luck and the wolf ahead, his fireball slowly becoming bigger before it was finally time. Full moon, crimson nova. The massive ball of crimson fire blasted straight at them with moderate speed, leaving a trail of fire in its path and lighting up the entire forest before the two entities ahead of him were completely engulfed in crimson flames. His smile grew even further listening to the wolf's agonizing cry in the burning hellish tornado flames before it all subsided, leaving nothing behind of the wolf that once was. There is not even a charred remain, only the odd, all too realistic, disgusting smell of burning flesh that he was not sure if he would ever get used to, yet was forced to deal with for the duration of his time playing, so it was no big deal. Plus 25 XP. Level up. Hey, Luck. The road is up ahead. Let's go. Luck, 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 Luck. What the fuck? They enabled friendly fire? Beneath a clear, star-studded night sky, a small glowing object zipped across the firmament, barely noticeable to anyone below. Yet to one figure darting across the rooftops of a bustling city, it felt like an omen. Down below, the streets were alive with chaos and indulgence. Firelit stalls, drunken laughter, strippers flaunting their charm for coin, armored guards pacing like hawks waiting to pounce, and beggars clutching bowls in trembling hands. All of it framed in shadows, rendered vividly in red-tinted hues through the man's enhanced vision. Clad entirely in black, his pale, ghost-like face exposed to the cold wind, the figure leapt effortlessly from rooftop to rooftop. Short, snow-white hair danced behind him, and his crimson eyes glimmered like twin rubies in the dark. Despite the chill, sweat beaded down his face. His heart pounded, his fangs clenched. His timer was running out. Stop right there, criminal scum. No one breaks the law on my watch. A guard's deep voice echoed from the street below, flat, rehearsed, and dangerously familiar. Shit, they spotted me. Panic surged. His plan was crumbling. This wasn't just any run, it was the run. Years of preparation, practice, and heartbreak funneled into this singular moment. There was no room for failure. Not now. Not when I'm this close. North. He's heading north. More voices. More footsteps. Metal boots pounding stone. He needed more speed. He needed every bit of juice he had left. Wind Walker. Haste. His body flared with a red and green aura, blood and mana draining rapidly. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, speeding across the rooftops like a blur, moving with the practiced grace of someone who had done this thousands of times. Stop! In the name of the law! The guards chanted robotically behind him. He ignored them, tuned them out like ambient noise. His eyes narrowed. Almost there. Then he saw it. A small, dimly lit pub nestled between stone buildings. A few drunk men laughed at a table out back, dressed in tattered peasant garb. But his focus locked onto a very different man. Pants unzipped, swaying where he stood, red-faced, and relieving himself against the wall near the back door. Perfect. He spawned. Without hesitation, the white-haired man dropped from the rooftop, landing silently behind the pub. No one noticed. Not the piss-soaked NPC. Not the group of ale-slamming drunks. Not even the guards, still scrambling somewhere behind. He turned, faced the wall, aligned himself precisely with a moss-covered crack. Then he began sprinting into it, again and again, like a lunatic slamming his head against a brick wall. A few feet away, the peeing man hummed. Behind him, the drunk spoke casually. "Did you hear? King Reinhardt's army got wiped out." "What? No survivors?" "None." Bruma Hills cursed. "Some say it was midnight." He didn't care. Not about the war. Not about midnight. Not about the lore. Only the run mattered. "Guards! He's here!" He flinched. Spotted red and silver armor flashing around the corner. Blades drawn. Less than 100 meters. Come on, come on. Piss faster, damn it. That damn Serena. She's been mouthy again. Might have to set her straight. The urinating man finished. Zipped up. Reached for the door. Please. The guards were nearly on him. Submit or perish. The sword came down, but fate was on his side. With drunken force, the NPC slammed open the pub door, just as the blade descended. And like a ghost, the white-haired man vanished. Clipped through the world. Phased into the floor. Gone. Huh? Must have been the wind. The guards looked around, dumbfounded. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city, surrounded by endless void, Ren Silver, the man, the myth, the world's #1 streamer, cheered wildly as he tumbled through nothingness. "Lee eats gugu." "Yep, baby. SUB6 baby. That's what I've been grinding for." He pumped his fists, shaking with adrenaline. Ding, ding, ding. $10,000 donation from Biggest_Decus. Sub 6. You beat your own world record run. This will never be topped. $1,000 from Erectal_Reptile. Bro, that clip was filthy. Insane timing. Goat. Ren laughed breathlessly, skimming through the wall of donations and chat spam flooding his interface. His hands trembled. This was it. His perfect run. The pissing NPC only spawned 25% of the time. Getting him was a gamble. Getting the timing and position right? Near impossible. Aliard on top of that. Legendary. And now, as he floated through the game's kill plane, the credits rolled. A soft orchestral score played. Developer names faded in and out. He muted the game. Chat exploded. Poggers. That skip was nasty. Ren is him. Can't believe it actually worked. Then the system message appeared. Congratulations, player. You have completed all main and side content. You are the true savior of the world for now. Final time. 5 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. New world record. Hidden quest complete. Undisputed champion. And then, on behalf of New Era Studios, we're thrilled to offer you Ren Silver, the #1 player in the world, exclusive early access to our long-awaited, game-changing next update. Accept, decline. Ren stared at the glowing prompt and grinned. Let's make history again. There he saw an old man carrying a string attached to a horse, shabbily dressed in standard villager clothes, sitting at the front of a brown, worn-down-looking carriage with what seemed like a lit small tent in the back-to-house boxes that Ren managed to spot from behind him. He had short, ash-gray hair that fell down slightly past his thin eyebrows that sat firmly above his eyes that were for some reason closed. He had a sweet, tender-looking smile on his face that had various wrinkles and cracks, clearly showing his age and what seemed like small scars on his hard-working hands. Yet, despite his innocent, loving appearance, he could not help but feel like there was something off about him, maybe even dark. Ren was not able to fully admire the character models before seeing how small Luck was, but seeing an actual real-life human left him almost completely speechless before he mustered himself up to talk and see if all the AI was as good as Luck's as well. Greetings, kind sir. I really appreciate your offer, but I'm sorry to say that I am completely broke. His eyes still closed and his face still tenderly smiling, the old man spoke once more. It doesn't have to be money. It could be anything of somewhat value. But I won't force you if you don't want to. The village I assume you're headed to is very far away, so I thought I'd give you a lift since we were on our way there as well. Our, Ren thought, noting it in his mind like usual. Would these daggers do? They are clean and in good condition. I can assure you of that. The daggers that Ren received from Luck were very standard and did not match what he usually liked, so it was a good way to get rid of them since he was never going to use them anyways. He wanted to join the old man on the carriage for many reasons. To test the new AI, possible side quests, possibly being part of the main quest, and most importantly, because he was unnaturally tired and needed to rest. If the village was far like he claimed, then he knew there was no way he would last. So, do you like them? Are they good enough? The old man simply put his hands on his mouth, glancing in his direction with his eyes still closed like he was deep in thought. Sir, if you don't mind me asking, why are you not opening your eyes to see my daggers? Hearing Ren's words, the man couldn't help but let out a small chuckle. Kid, I'm blind. Huh? Ren could not believe his own ears, but before he was able to respond, the old man beat him to it. Those daggers are indeed quite fine. I shall take them. There should be more than enough space for you in the carriage. Climb on back, and we'll be off. The old man's smile was pure and bore absolutely no malice, one that felt so real and genuine that Ren could not help but stare at him for a few seconds, him seemingly oblivious before Ren walked to the back of the carriage and jumped in. There. As soon as he did, he saw various boxes stacked on top of each other, some open revealing their contents being food and grains that he surprisingly managed to also smell. However, that was not what caught his attention. Quietly sitting on a bench near the front of the carriage was a small, blonde-haired girl, no older than 10 years old, wearing clothes slightly better than rags. She had purple eyes on her dirty, white skin that looked slightly tanned from clear hard work in the sun, various dried-up scratches and wounds on her small hands. She was looking down at the wooden floor, waving her feet in the air that did not touch the ground below before her gaze abruptly shifted to Ren's direction. Suddenly, her eyes and body began shaking uncontrollably, her face immediately changing into a face filled with absolute fear, like her heart was about to leap out of her chest. Ah! She screamed in a high pitch like she saw a ghost, finding the power in herself to jump out of her seat and rush towards the front of the carriage where the old man sat, catching him along with Ren completely off guard. Grandpa! Grandpa! Tee that man! I'm scared. We need to run. We're gonna die. His face, his eyes, his hair. Her eyes completely burst into waterworks, her heart beating faster than machine gun fire as she began to shake her grandpa vigorously like her life depended on it, whispering in his ears so she doesn't catch the attention of that man at the front. Petra, calm down. What's gotten into you? Don't you think it's rude to be judging someone by their appearance? People have different features and circumstances, you know. I thought you were old enough to get this. He deeply sighed with a great hint of embarrassment towards his client and disappointment in his granddaughter. Be but grandpa. Hee. I said calm down, young lady. I promise you he isn't going to hurt. I sense him with my gift. You know, I don't invite people on if I know they're bad. But he's not a bad person. If you disrespect him again, then I will be very angry with you. The girl whose face was still white as a ghost took a deep gulp, clenching her fists before saying, Why, yes, Grandpa. I understand. She mumbled, walking back in the carriage, sitting back where she previously was, the fear and unease on her face still clear despite her efforts to keep everything under control, which Ren found rather cute. He did not manage to pick up on what the girl spoke, but he clearly heard the voice of the old man. It seemed like the girl was simply scared of strangers. At first, he thought it was because she knew he was a vampire, but it seemed like the NPC AI had not been adjusted to compensate for that. In the old update of Rebirth, the NPCs would not care at all about the player's race, clothing, or appearance. A player could walk around a church as a naked demon, and they would still receive no reaction from the NPCs, and it seemed like that had not been completely fixed, which made sense from a game development perspective since all the many races shared the same story mode. As to not agitate her, he sat on the complete opposite side of the bench and took a glance at her, smiling and nodding in her direction, which only led to her immediately turning away from him. Oh, so cute. Suddenly, with a small whipping sound, the carriage began to move forward at a steady pace. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's gotten into her. I'm sure she doesn't mean any disrespect. Oh, don't worry. I don't mind at all. I'm sure she's quite shy, so I completely understand. I used to be like that when I was small, too. Ren chuckled at himself. So, traveler, what's your name? I'm Adrian, and that little angel over there is my sweet little granddaughter Petra. Say hi to the kind stranger. Petra slowly turned her head, trying her best to avoid eye contact with him, and bowed. Hello. My name is Petra. I'm so sorry for my earlier outburst. Grandpa says you're a nice guy, and his gift is never wrong. I hope we can get along. She spoke before turning away once more, Ren still finding it rather cute. He was used to dealing with children in his previous job before streaming, and it felt very refreshing seeing someone like Petra. Yes, I hope we can get along too. Ren nodded back with a smile. Thank you so much for all this kindness. My name is Aliard, and it is very nice to meet you. Aliard? That is a rather unusual name. You must not be from around here, right? Sorry, I probably could have picked up on that if I wasn't blind. He laughed heartily at himself. He said my name just like how Luck did. Either they're both also essential NPCs, or the AI had all advanced to that level. He took another mental note before speaking. Yeah, I'm not from here. I come from the continent of Asteria. Ren said what he said with intent. He wanted to see how the NPC would react, as he wanted to extract as much information out of him as possible. Asteria? I've never heard of such a place. Ren nodded at his words and took things in. Asteria was the continent that was played in the last update. So, he seemed to be in a new region, just like he expected. How did you get here, traveler? I washed up on shore a few weeks ago and have been aimlessly wandering since. You're the first humans I've seen ever since I came here, so it's very refreshing. The old man, Adrian's expression shifted into surprise hearing his words. Oh, wow, that must have been a very hard life. The shore is quite far from here. I would offer you food, but I need everything here to ship to Goldcrest. Oh yes, food, I need to test that out soon. Ren once again noted in his head. For as long as he could remember, in Rebirth, food served as nothing but simple consumables that gave no taste, so he was really curious to see how that was affected. Why are you shipping so much food if you don't mind me asking? Seeing that you're not from here, you might not know this. The neighboring town of Nuxvar was just attacked by, for what I heard, soldiers or mercenaries, and many people evacuated to Goldcrest. I need to transfer this food for the refugees. Ren inwardly nodded once more before asking a question that had been bugging him for too long. So, sir, I have a question. You say that you're blind, but you're still able to drive this carriage, and you were still able to inspect my daggers. How is that? Well, that is simply my gift. Gift? Ren raised an eyebrow. He had heard the word tossed around, but he had no idea what it meant. Oh, I guess you might not have had that in your continent. A gift is a special power given to a very select few and can vary drastically from person to person. I may have been born blind, but I never had any problem seeing. My gift allows me to sense the auras of everything around me, inanimate or not. I can also sense many things about the auras, including if they are bad or good. That is how I'm able to tell that you're not a bad guy. Adrian laughed once more, making Ren inwardly nod and note everything down mentally. It seemed to be a new game mechanic added. He was fairly certain he had not received one, and he began to wonder at what level he would unlock it or if it was something exclusive to the NPCs. Ren took a deep breath. It seemed like he had gotten most of what he wanted off his chest, but now it was time to ask about the very specifics. Old man Adrian, if you don't mind me asking, can you tell me a bit about this continent and the general area? I don't know anything, and I don't want to look like an idiot when we get to town. Why, certainly. I'd be glad to help. The old man responded in a good mood, whipping his horse forward down the road. For the next hour or so, Ren spent his time casually talking with the old man. He was not used to role-playing with NPCs in such a way, but he could not help but be sucked into his role of wandering warrior from another continent, which also served as intel gathering to him. He learned many things from old man Adrian, from the general geography of the area, the country he was in along with what was neighboring it, the currency, how some of the society worked, and much more. He couldn't help but bombard him with seemingly endless questions, some of which he was unable to answer and others that he had no problem telling him about. Despite asking him nonstop for nearly an hour, during that entire time, not once did he get tired or complain, keeping a smile on his face. He seemed to be a genuinely nice guy, a breath of fresh air from all the people he was used to dealing with in real life. At times, he would even forget he was talking to a simple NPC only for reality to hit him very hard. It was an odd experience he had never felt before playing any video game. After asking most of what was on his mind, Ren was satisfied and relaxed back on the bench, completely at peace with a smile on his face, casually looking at the beauty of the outside world and enjoying the smell of fresh air, instead of checking if the fast-forward option was still in the game. Yet, despite all of that, he could not shake off an odd feeling in his heart, like something inconceivable, dark and ominous laid within this carriage. He had an urge to stand up and check around for any hidden items. But that was when something happened that he did not expect. Hello, mister. I just wanted to properly apologize again. The girl that looked at him like the boogeyman only an hour prior seemed to be trying to make up with him. Maybe it was from seeing him so casually talking with her grandpa earlier. Oh no, please don't worry about it. It's no big deal. He nodded at her with a smile, leading into a small, awkward silence before he spoke once again. Hey, Petra, do you have a coin? I want to show you something cool. Ren lifted his hands from his sides and thrust it in front of him wide open with a smile. At first, she was slightly hesitant before she decided to agree and trust him, which was more like trusting in her grandpa's words. Out of her pocket, she pulled out a copper coin, the coin worth the least, and placed it in his hands. Here. Her voice was still shy, which made Ren smile. Making kids happy was a big part of why he liked his last job, but his colleagues and the annoying and rowdy kids were what really ruined it for him. Thank you. He took the coin and placed it hovering into his palm, hidden behind his fingers. I will be placing the coin here. I will snap my fingers 3 times, snap, 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 and voila. What? It's gone. It's really gone. What did you do with the coin? Do you know invisibility magic? Ren chuckled at himself before he continued. Now, I'll be placing my fingers back into my hands. And after snapping 3 times, snap, snap, snap. It's back. It's really back. How did you do that, mister? A true magician never reveals his secrets. Ren could not help but chuckle once more, saying that since he learned it from a YouTube video himself. Hey, do you want to see another trick? Yes, please. The previously scared eyes of the child were no more, replaced by stars that damn near illuminated the entire carriage. At first, Ren was only doing what he did to test the limits of the new NPCs, but he could not help but feel happy doing so too. It really took him back to those days of teaching elementary school. He never thought he would miss it, but doing what he did made him somehow relive those good old days, singling out the good, disregarding the many, many bad that happened. I will throw this coin in the air, and you have to guess in which hand it's in after I catch it, okay? She nodded vigorously. Flick. Snatch. He whipped his fists at top speed towards the coin and grabbed it. Left or right? Left. It was definitely left. Wrong. It was in my right. Wow. How was that even possible? Show me more. A small laugh was heard from the front of the carriage as old man Adrian most likely noticed what they were up to. For the next few minutes, instead of searching around like he wanted to, Ren ended up spending his time playing with Petra, showing her various magic tricks he had learned online before the carriage suddenly came to a halt. We're now right outside the village. The security there is very tight right now, considering everything that's going on, so this is as far as I could take you. The rest you'll have to go by foot. That will be fine. Walking the rest of the way won't be a problem. Thank you for everything, sir. Ho ho. It was truly a pleasure. Thank you for showing Petra a good time. Good luck to you and your friend. Hope you get him some help soon. Wait, friend? How do you know about Lou Dash? He thought to himself before the answer hit him in the face immediately. No worries. She's a sweet little girl who wouldn't be happy playing with her. Ren stood up and left his daggers sitting on the bench where he previously sat and looked straight at Petra. Here you go. Thanks for letting me borrow it. He placed the copper coin he borrowed back into her hands and turned around to the exit of the carriage before he felt a tug on his gauntlets. Do you really have to go? Yes, Petra. I have to go now, but I'm sure we'll meet again soon. Really? Do you promise? He nodded to her words, rubbing her on the head with a tender smile. Yes, I promise. As he prepared himself to go once more, he felt another tug on his hands and a voice that sounded more like a whisper. Take this. I'm sure you're really hungry. Just don't let Grandpa see it. When he looked down, he noticed a bright red apple in his hand. "Okay, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you." He hid the apple in his pocket and hopped out of the carriage and onto the muddy trail under the night sky. "Okay, let's go." Whip. As soon as he hopped off, the carriage once again started rolling away in the distance, with Petra waving at him from the back, and him waving back at her until they were no longer seen. Bye-bye, Aliard. Ren took a big huff of fresh air, playing with the apple in his hands deep in thought. The gamer side of him really wanted to test out what would happen if he were to kill the merchant and his granddaughter, especially since there was that ominous feeling that could not leave his subconscious ever since he went in. It was like it was screaming at him to do something about it. By killing the merchant and his daughter, he might have unlocked a secret quest, a secret item, received goods to resell. But at the same time, there was a high chance of him failing the tutorial doing so. There were so many possibilities, and all he would lose out on would have been a little time after he resets. However, for some odd, inexplicable reason, he simply could not let himself do it. It was completely unlike him and his nature. He had never hesitated about killing any NPC in the past, so why now of all times? Had he grown such an attachment to random NPCs? Even if they acted more realistically than any NPC before, they were still NPCs, which was probably also the reason he was able to so casually talk to them. However, even still, he did not feel any regret choosing what he chose. He just hoped that it wouldn't be the case for all the NPCs in the world. Ren shook his head and disregarded those thoughts and looked at the sky. It seemed like nighttime was only going to last for a few more hours, so he needed to find an end very soon. His vision then shifted ahead of him. Around 1 kilometer away was a village, just like the old man said. It seemed rather simple and primitive, with some buildings that seemed to be fairly high class and made out of stone, while most other ones seemed to be made out of wood or even straws. Around the entire village was an extremely long yet very short palisade, walls spanning many kilometers, and a gate where the road led. The fully rested Ren immediately began walking on the road towards the city, smiling before taking a bite of his apple with great anticipation. Crunch. Wait, what the fuck? I can actually taste this thing. He could not contain his excitement as he dug into the entire apple with star-like eyes. Damn, that was good. Realistic as hell. Now let's hope they don't make me taste blood if I suck someone. He laughed heartily at himself, knowing exactly what the answer to that question was. There was still a long way to go until he reached the village, and he decided to take it into assigning his 5 stat points and 1 class point. He did not yet have any classes other than vampire, so it was the obvious choice, or more like the only choice he had. Just like he expected, at level 2, it provided him with no new skills or spells, but with 2 extra stat points that were auto-assigned into physical attack and magic attack. And for the other 5, he assigned 2 in special, 2 in MP, and 1 in agility. Normally, for the start, he would have dumped everything in the agility stat, but seeing that he is playing more casually, he decided that his stats should reflect that as well. As soon as he did, he felt a sudden rush of energy envelop his body that felt similar to how it was before, only now it was hitting him in places he never even thought were there. He felt his body become lighter, the armor on him felt slightly lighter too, and his muscles tensed up like a key unlocking some sort of hidden potential within him. He began jumping and running around, feeling himself, before he stopped once more when he became tired, cursing the devs for removing the infinite sprint glitch. Before he even knew it, he was face to face with the village walls that were much taller than he expected, seeing them from far, reaching over 4 meters in height. There at the gates were 2 armed guards with metal spears in hand, standing lazily around doing nothing with almost completely lifeless eyes, just like pretty much every guard NPC in every game. The gates themselves were wide open, almost like they were inviting him in, so he decided he might as well answer that call. Do you think these new refugees are going to ruin the upcoming holy festival? Why do they have to come now, of all times? This is a once-in-a-half-century type of thing. What if they find out? Don't worry, Linnies, they are one of us. They will join us in the festival. Really? I had no idea Nuxvar were also followers of Kree. Who the hell is that guy? I don't know. Just tell him to fuck off or prove who he is. Hey, stranger, back away from the gate. Forced event or cutscene with the guards right before entry to a town or city. The classic. Should have expected this. Some things never change, don't they? With a smile on his face, he raised his hands in the air and slowly approached the gate where the two guards stood. Fear not, guards. I have come in peace. I've simp. Monster. It's a monster. Quack. What the fuck, asterisk? Quack. Suddenly, his vision grew hazy, throwing up buckets of blood on the ground with a sickening pain thrust through his stomach. When he looked down, he noticed a wooden stick aimed at where all the pain was, making him tightly hold it as a desperate attempt to stay standing. Blood. This was never supposed to be in the game. Pain. That wasn't supposed to be a thing either. Cough, cough. And monster. That dreaded yell rang in his ears once again, the pain piercing his stomach only increasing even more. Cough. Am I gonna die? Am I really gonna die? This can't be happening. What is this? The devs would never, ever do this. Cough. Before he even knew it, tears began welling up in his eyes, rolling down his face like a waterfall, which made his vision even worse than before. For a moment, he focused on the pain, honing in on every sensation. Where it came from, how badly it hurt, and how badly he wanted it to stop. When he looked up, he managed to notice the hazy figure of that middle-aged guard and the fearful look in his eyes like he had seen a ghost. The grip on the spear thrust through his body became weaker, that along with his legs that could barely even stand, sinking ever so slowly towards the cold ground below. His vision grew ever darker and more nauseous as the entire world felt unrecognizable to him, and all that was left of him was the unbearable pain and the voices in his head. Everything felt too unreal. It couldn't be real. Was he dying? Was he dreaming? His life flashed right before his eyes along with all his regrets and aspirations for the future as tears of pure agony began to slowly trickle down his cold face. His thoughts lingered until they could not linger anymore. He wanted it all to end. He desired relief, no matter what form it came in. And finally, his wish came true as everything went slowly and painfully blank. The sight of the bright, full moon and the scared guard the last things that he saw. Ren gradually opened his blurry eyes, the entire world twisting and turning around him until it once again became clear. Where am I? He mumbled to himself, staring an unfamiliar stone, mossy ceiling dripping what he assumed to be water on his head. As his hazy vision and hearing became crystal, his smell followed right after. Gawk! Suddenly, the blurriness in his eyes returned. His mind felt like it was spinning and about to explode out of his skull from nausea as he clenched and contracted his turning, shriveled stomach from completely erupting out of his mouth. The odor entering his nose was completely disgusting beyond his wildest imagination. The smell was so horrid that the polluted black and yellow air that roamed the streets of his city paled in comparison. He had absolutely no idea what it was. If a mountain of feces was sitting mere centimeters from him, he doubted that it would be even able to compare. Where am I, Gawk? He muttered to himself, still lying down and blankly staring at the ceiling, trying his best to ignore the smell before suddenly. Squeak! Ah! He screamed a high-pitched scream. A massive, gray red-eyed rat crawled onto his face like he was nothing but a corpse. The sensation of its hairy, wet, disgusting body on his face scared and revolted him beyond his wildest dreams. Ah! Shuddering, he instinctively tried to run away from the monstrosity in front of him. However, when he tried to move more than an inch, he felt the deepest, most disturbing wave of pain in his entire life. Like his bones were crushed to dust all at once. Luckily for him, due to his screams alone, the rat scurried away in utter fear, completely out of his field of vision. Ren was breathing heavy, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets, yet absolutely no sweat was escaping from any of his pores, and he did not feel his heart beating at all when he would have expected it to be pounding like a battering ram on steroids. His cold, familiar yet unfamiliar feeling body that he was not even able to grasp immediately tensed up as he slowly looked down at it with his vision that had once again grown hazy and dizzy, time suddenly slowing down in his mind. Drip, drop, drip, drop. With shaky, horrified eyes that shrunk to the size of peas, he witnessed the traumatizing sight of his naked limbs, twisted and turned in odd ways that were not in any world natural, like some sort of bent spaghetti or messed up tree branches, wounds and bruises all over what he could only assume to be his flesh. He was surprised to even be living with such injuries. The sight nearly made his heart leap out of his chest, but instead, he threw up everything in his stomach as he managed to roll slightly to his side, horrified beyond his wildest dreams. There, in his own bloody barf, he witnessed small pieces of a red apple. The simple sight of that made everything click in his mind, like it was some sort of missing link. He remembered everything. Everything from starting up the game until he got nearly killed by a city guard, along with everything before and in between. He was feeling pain, actual pain beyond any human capacity he had ever imagined, and he was feeling that right now. It was like his worst nightmare come true, only it sadly felt too real to be one. His mind was in more turmoil than almost ever before in his life. Only the death of his father could compare. He was not in a game. No way he was in a game. New era would have ensued to oblivion if he were. Other than certain situations, Rebirth did not allow any blood in their game of any kind, let alone pain beyond the very basics. Characters and NPCs were simply nothing but numbers. Biting into a person as a vampire felt more like biting into cardboard. Upon death, NPCs and mobs simply dropped their loot on the ground and disappeared. The game took so many precautionary measures to separate itself from real violence. In a game centered around killing and adventuring, especially one as realistic looking and feeling as even the old version of Rebirth, a line had to be drawn. No one would play the game if the killing was too realistic. Most humans would refuse and be absolutely disgusted at taking a human life. So making an entire game centered around realistically doing it was not a smart move, not to mention completely illegal. And pain receptors were suppressed for a reason. It was simply a game after all. No one would pay to constantly fight life or death battles, only to die and respawn over and over and over again until they achieved victory. No one wanted an endless, realistic war simulator unless they were the military. If anything, if that were to happen, the game would be simply used as a means to cultivate serial killers, as killing would become so numb, and the sick-minded might even find it fun and try in real life. It would be completely different than playing any other normal video game such as GTE, since it lacked many of the realistic elements and drew a clear line between game and reality. But now all those rules seemed to have been gutted out the window. That only left him with two options, and none of them said this was simply a game. Either he got transported to another world, or he was living in a realistic simulation illegally conducted by New Era. No matter what choice it was, he was certain of one thing. Someone was messing with him, and there was only one way he could find out, as he mumbled in his beyond hurting mind. Options. And suddenly, a familiar screen appeared right in front of him. He was obviously unable to scroll down with his broken arms, so he simply had to use his mind and eyes until he reached the very bottom. Log out. He issued the voice command, only to be left in silence, but then a message appeared. This option is currently not available. Please get past the tutorial first. He expected to see the message, but the realization of seeing it in real life incited some sort of primal instinct from within him. Maybe it was the part of him that had faith and wished from the bottom of his heart for his instinct to be wrong. Log out. This option is see you. Log out. This log out. TH. He was going crazy. He wanted to cry, but his body would not even allow him to. The horror, sadness, and hopelessness in his soul were immeasurable, and he could not even let it out in tears other than small hints of blood. Someone was clearly messing with him, either a god or a game developer. In hindsight, he should have realized it when he was unable to reload a checkpoint. He should have realized it when he saw hints of what he assumed to be blood on luck. He should have realized it when he sniffed the awful smell of the armor he wore that he now knew was the smell of a corpse. He should have realized it when the entire game felt all too realistic and NPCs felt like actual humans. His carelessness and excitement blinded him, and this was the punishment he received for it. Oh, whatever god or higher being is seeing this. Stop screwing with me. Please stop screwing with me. Why did I deserve this? What did I do? What do you want? Answer me. Please stop and end my misery. He murmured, staring at that dreaded, life-sucking blue error screen only to receive absolutely no response but the drops of water falling from the ceiling and the slight sound of metal clanking in the air. Drip, drop, drip, drop. If I'm here, I might be dead in real life. I might be dead in real life. That sudden realization abruptly sunk in even deeper. He, with all his money and fame, might have died, but dying after success was not the crisis he was facing. It was simply the fact that his mother, the only family he had left, would be receiving his entire inheritance, which left him in even more turmoil than before. However, that was when a small smile appeared on his face, remembering that he had taken precautionary measures to ensure his money did not ever end up in her hands. If only he could see the look on her face when she finds out. However, his smile and slight moment of bliss were then immediately taken away by a drop of water falling on his face. The squeak of the rat in the distance, along with that same loathsome smell re-entering his nose that he now recognized as the smell of rot, death, and decay. Drip, drop, drip, drop. Gawk. He looked around the room, only to notice exactly what he expected. Beyond the pool of his own bloody barf beside him laid rivers of disgusting, unknown liquids running through the cracks of the cold, dirty stone ground. Moss was growing from every inch of the room. Shackles on the cracked walls, a bucket in the corner surrounded by various rats right next to it. The more he looked, the more his fear increased. He was no doubt in a prison or some sort of dungeon. If his body had not been broken beyond repair, he was certain it would be shaking uncontrollably. Just by looking at his surroundings, the cold, ruthless reality of his new life and existence became more than apparent. All that awaited him was gloom. He wanted it all to end, but the end did not seem anywhere in sight as his mind raged and brewed like a storm, tears of blood finally coming down from his eyes. But even through those thoughts, he did not wish for death. He still had a will of his own and wanted to live. Even he was unsure why. Was it his father's words to him? Or was it something else within him he did not even know about? Stomp, 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 stomp. Clank. And in the deepest depths of his dark cave of panic, fright, and despair, the exit now only seemed to get even farther. Or had it just gotten closer? I thought I heard something from here. Glad to see you're finally awake. You disgusting little vampire. Beneath a clear, star-studded night sky, a small glowing object zipped across the firmament, barely noticeable to anyone below. Yet to one figure darting across the rooftops of a bustling city, it felt like an omen. Down below, the streets were alive with chaos and indulgence. Firelit stalls, drunken laughter, strippers flaunting their charm for coin, armored guards pacing like hawks waiting to pounce, and beggars clutching bowls in trembling hands. All of it framed in shadows, rendered vividly in red-tinted hues through the man's enhanced vision. Clad entirely in black, his pale, ghost-like face exposed to the cold wind, the figure leapt effortlessly from rooftop to rooftop. Short, snow-white hair danced behind him, and his crimson eyes glimmered like twin rubies in the dark. Despite the chill, sweat beaded down his face. His heart pounded, his fangs clenched. His timer was running out. Stop right there, criminal scum. No one breaks the law on my watch. A guard's deep voice echoed from the street below, flat, rehearsed, and dangerously familiar. Shit, they spotted me. Panic surged. His plan was crumbling. This wasn't just any run, it was the run. Years of preparation, practice, and heartbreak funneled into this singular moment. There was no room for failure. Not now. Not when I'm this close. North. He's heading north. More voices. More footsteps. Metal boots pounding stone. He needed more speed. He needed every bit of juice he had left. Wind Walker. Haste! His body flared with a red and green aura, blood and mana draining rapidly. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, speeding across the rooftops like a blur, moving with the practiced grace of someone who had done this thousands of times. Stop! In the name of the law! The guards chanted robotically behind him. He ignored them, tuned them out like ambient noise. His eyes narrowed. Almost there. Then he saw it. A small, dimly lit pub nestled between stone buildings. A few drunk men laughed at a table out back, dressed in tattered peasant garb. But his focus locked onto a very different man. Pants unzipped, swaying where he stood, red-faced, and relieving himself against the wall near the back door. Perfect! He spawned. Without hesitation, the white-haired man dropped from the rooftop, landing silently behind the pub. No one noticed. Not the piss-soaked NPC. Not the group of ale-slamming drunks. Not even the guards, still scrambling somewhere behind. He turned, faced the wall, aligned himself precisely with a moss-covered crack. Then he began sprinting into it, again and again, like a lunatic slamming his head against a brick wall. A few feet away, the peeing man hummed. Behind him, the drunk spoke casually. Did you hear? King Reinhardt's army got wiped out. What? No survivors. None. Bruma Hills cursed. Some say it was midnight. He didn't care. Not about the war. Not about midnight. Not about the lore. Only the run mattered. Guards. He's here. He flinched. Spotted red and silver armor flashing around the corner. Blades drawn. Less than 100 meters. Come on, come on. Piss faster, damn it. That damn Serena. She's been mouthy again. Might have to set her straight. The urinating man finished. Zipped up. Reached for the door. Please. The guards were nearly on him. Submit or perish. The sword came down, but fate was on his side. With drunken force, the NPC slammed open the pub door, just as the blade descended. And like a ghost, the white-haired man vanished. Clipped through the world. Phased into the floor. Gone. Huh? Must have been the wind. The guards looked around, dumbfounded. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city, surrounded by endless void, Ren Silver, the man, the myth, the world's #1 streamer, cheered wildly as he tumbled through nothingness. Lee eats gugu. Yep, baby. SUB6 baby. That's what I've been grinding for. He pumped his fists, shaking with adrenaline. Ding, ding, ding. $10,000 donation from Biggest_Decus. Sub 6. You beat your own world record run. This will never be topped. $1,000 from Erectal_Reptile. Bro, that clip was filthy. Insane timing. Goat. Ren laughed breathlessly, skimming through the wall of donations and chat spam flooding his interface. His hands trembled. This was it. His perfect run. The pissing NPC only spawned 25% of the time. Getting him was a gamble. Getting the timing and position right? Near impossible. Aliard on top of that. Legendary. And now, as he floated through the game's kill plane, the credits rolled. A soft orchestral score played. Developer names faded in and out. He muted the game. Chat exploded. Poggers. That skip was nasty. Ren is him. Can't believe it actually worked. Then the system message appeared. Congratulations, player. You have completed all main and side content. You are the true savior of the world for now. Final time. 5 hours, 59 minutes, and 47 seconds. New world record. Hidden quest complete. Undisputed champion. And then, on behalf of New Era Studios, we're thrilled to offer you Ren Silver, the #1 player in the world, exclusive early access to our long-awaited, game-changing next update. Accept, decline. Ren stared at the glowing prompt and grinned. Let's make history again. Forcing his body to move behind the guard was a task more excruciating than he ever expected. With every step, he felt his bones cracking. His body felt like it weighed tons, like gravity was pushing down at him with 10 times its vigor, and like 2 elephants were taking a piggyback ride on his naked back. In all his years of beating and pain that he never thought could be topped, it might have now met its match. Although he would argue his mental anguish had yet to peak past his father's death. Still, He gritted his teeth and forced his body to move forward, no matter what, since he knew if he didn't it would only be worse for him. Behind the guard, he slowly walked into the stone hallway of what seemed like a barracks. Torches on each side of the cracked walls dyeing his vision a flickering tint of yellow. The hallway itself was lined with prison cells that housed other people inside of them, locked up like wild animals. Some of them were actual animals, as in beast men and demi-humans, such as lizard men, yet most of them still consisted of humans. The looks on their faces were like that of zombies, some of them skinny as wires for malnourishment, dirt on their faces with nothing but rags infested with fecal matter for clothes. He felt a pain in his empty stomach looking at their traumatizing state, yet he did not at all feel pity or worry for anyone other than himself. As soon as he went by their cells, they could not help but look up at him with dead-looking sad eyes like they knew something bad was going to happen. That was when he noticed something that made him want to throw up what little stomach acid he had remaining. Far right, in one of the cells he saw children. They could have not been any older than 10 or 12 years old. Their stomachs were contracted. Their constitution was like twigs to the point that it looked inhuman. Their dirt-stained faces barely contained their droopy eyes. Some of them were crying, hugging, comforting some of the younger children, while others had the look of pure despair and hopelessness, like there was no point to ever expect escape. Ren was a teacher and always had a soft side for children. Most of these were humans. Only part of them were demi-humans and beastmen. What kind of prison was this? And how could the guards not even bat an eye? Was he even a real monster? What crimes had they committed? Why did they deserve such a fate? As they looked at him walking past, he noticed the disgusted glances of the few, but the depressed, lifeless, and crying stares were more prominent, and broke him most of all. He could not help but see his old self in their eyes. "Monster, please save us." He heard the small whispers of a little boy. Yet, all he could do was close his eyes and look away, knowing there was nothing that could be done. He took a slow gulp of saliva that fell down towards his cramped, non-existent stomach as he went to walk through a door to another side of the building. On this end, the cells were replaced by different walls as far as the eye could see, banners hanging from both sides with text he did not at all recognize, and obscure bronze statues and symbols. There were statues of an armored winged creature holding a scale. It truly looked majestic, yet they were not the only ones. There were also the statues and symbols of a nine-tailed cat, which Ren found particularly odd, yet could not let himself linger on for too long as he needed to focus all the power in his body to move forward. Of course, he was very familiar with the legend of the nine-tailed fox, but a cat was completely foreign to him and almost made no sense. As they walked even further down the hallway, other guards wearing black and white were seen either guarding or conversing amongst each other, and without a single exception, they all stopped what they were doing and silently and coldly stared at his naked figure walking slowly behind the black-haired guard. He did not seem embarrassed at their gaze. He only felt apprehension, like the eyes of various predators were on him, ready to eat him alive. Some of them bore a grin of hatred and contempt, some with disgust, some with amusement, and others bearing a mixture or combination of them all. However, for certain, none of them bore any pity for him. In their eyes, he was not human. He was beneath even a wild animal and deserved to be treated as such. After what felt like an eternity of walking, the man he was following abruptly stopped. In front of him was a black door unlike any door previously seen before it. "We're finally here. The captain has been waiting for your arrival. Please enter. He has much to discuss with you. If you cooperate, you shouldn't be hurt too badly." The door in front of him slowly opened, revealing a dim light from within the room, his unease and anticipation nearly reaching their limits. "Captain, he's finally awake. I brought him in." The guard previously in front of him entered and spoke, of course not before bowing and saluting. "Good job, soldier. Bring the heathen in." A voice came from within, one deep and dark with no remorse. "Yes, sir." The guard stood from his position and looked back at him with that same disgusted look. "Get in." Gulping down his dismay and worries, he steeled himself to enter, walking by the hate-filled guard. Slam! The abrupt sound of the slamming door shutting closed behind him did not even startle him at all, as the cold, somber feeling of the room swept over him as he felt reluctant to even look up and inspect his surroundings. "Please, have a seat right over there. I just have a few questions to ask you." That same voice of death once again rang in his ears, sending slight shivers down his spine as he slowly lifted his head to make the entire room clear. It was a moderately sized room made out of stone. There was only one light source, no, two light sources if it was including the extremely small gap at the top of the wall leading to the outside world, showing barely any light, confirming that it was still nighttime and that he was indeed underground. The other light was from above, a fire-shedding light directly under it on a long, work-heavy table filled with various papers that spanned nearly half the room surface area. On the other side of the table sat a single man. If menacing had a physical personification, it would undoubtedly be that man in front of him. He had curly, jet-black hair that fell down slightly past his bright green eyes that shot daggers into his soul. His face was well-structured, yet showed slight hints of age and experience in battle. A large scar visible from the side of his cheek, just missing his eyes. Unlike the regular black and white worn by every other guard, this man, who was most likely the captain, wore black and red instead, odd symbolisms of cattails on the rough-looking armor that looked far more durable and pristine than that of the other guards, including the two guards standing directly behind him looking calm as ever. Yet he could not help but shake away the hints of their disgusting glares on his naked body. I said, "Please have a seat. Do you want to see what happens if I repeat myself once more?" Ren was snapped out of his daze and immediately complied in panic. Understood. He slowly forced his body that was beginning to feel slightly better and more tolerable towards the seat and sat down with his hands still tied behind his back, taking slight glimpses towards the captain on the other side. Silence. One of the men behind the captain cast an anti-spying spell to ensure what happens inside stayed private. "My name is Ray Thoden. What is yours?" Calmly, he grabbed a piece of paper from his desk and spoke gently, which was something that Ren did not expect. "My name is Rem." He mumbled back, finding the brain in himself to come up with a fake name to see if they had some way of lie detection, just to get it out of the way early. "Rem, that is quite an unusual name, is it not?" "Well, sir, I'm not from around here," he replied, a harsh emphasis on the word sir. A small chuckle was heard from the other side, making Ren's worry increase even more. "Of course I know that. Do you think I'm an idiot? I know exactly where you're from." "Why you do?" Ren's eyes grew wide hearing the captain's words, making many questions in his mind surface, such as are ice skate people a common thing? And did his body have a life prior to him inhabiting it? But none of his assumptions seemed to be the answer. "You're a soldier from the Orobonian theocracy, sent to raid these villages, churches, and temples in the name of the devils and demons you people associate with." The answer caught Ren completely off guard. It was a neighboring country that old man Adrian had talked to him about, but he did not know what they had to do now, and he could not help but let his opinions be known. What? I am not from there. Snap! Holy light! Suddenly, a massive beam of white, holy energy shot out of the ground and ceiling beneath him, bathing his body in white. The sensation of his flesh burning by some odd, divine light that both felt like fire and did not all at the same time felt so surreal. The pain was unlike anything he had experienced. It was unimaginable, like small, microscopic daggers striking him everywhere on his body, especially his heart. A feeling of lightheadedness and nausea took over himself as he felt like he was about to pass out or even die at any second. Every part of his being ached for an answer to this feeling of misery, and any answer that could bring relief was one worth considering. It was all too much to handle, and for a moment he even considered giving in to the pain and giving up before immediately shaking that thought away like it never occurred as he continued to fight on. And after what felt like an eternity of suffering in his mind, the pain suddenly subsided, leaving his body aching and nearly once again broken. No signs of burns to be found on his body, despite the feeling. "That is what you get when you lie to me. You got that?" The voice of that devil was picked up by his ears, making him look up to see his deadly, life-sucking stare. "What do you expect me to believe? You come to my town wearing the standard Orobonian soldier's uniform, And you expected me to accept that lie? Who the hell do you think I am? I'm the Knight Captain, not some fool who thinks the people who attacked Nuxvar were simple mercenaries. I can tell an Ouroborean insignia when I see one. Summoning and controlling a filthy vampire is 100% something they would do to increase their fighting strength. Ren was breathing heavy, still trying to recover and take everything in. The air that he'd been so deeply fantasizing about no longer mattered or felt as good as it did the first time. The armor that luck had given him must have belonged to one of the bandits that he now recognized as proper soldiers. He had to be careful about what to say if he did not want to get fried once more. Understood. The captain slowly nodded back. Good. So, you and your buddies had just attacked Nuxvar and killed hundreds in cold blood. From what I've seen, you must have been here to spy on us. So, is Goldcrest the next target? Who are you after? Is it one of the refugees here? Are they one of your targets? Did you hear about our holy festival and come to ruin it in the name of your devils? And where's your group's camp? If Ren could sweat, his entire body would have already been soaked. He had absolutely no idea what the answer was to any of those questions. But for his own survival, he had to answer. Before I answer, I would like to know how long I've been asleep for to assess the situation. 3 days. You slept like a sloth. No matter how many times we tried to wake you up, no matter what we used, you would simply not budge. Now answer the damn questions. Understood. I'll answer the best I can. Ren pretended to be remembering the answers when in reality, he was using the time to come up with his lies. I have no knowledge of this festival of yours. We have no target in this city. And yes, this city is our next target. There should be an attack either today or tomorrow. Our camp is a few kilometers northwest of the town, in between 2 small hills beside a river. As for the motives, I really don't know. I'm just a simple soldier. Please don't hurt me. I promise I'm telling you the truth. Silence once again befell the room as the captain put his hands over his mouth, deep in thought before he spoke. Norix, go out and confirm if this man's claims are truthful. Be back here in 2 hours and report your findings to me. Yes, sir. One of the men immediately saluted and bowed, sprinting out of the room in haste. That was when the captain's cold, bone-chilling gaze was brought back towards him, who was slowly losing more and more of his sanity. 2 hours. All I have to live are 2 hours, huh? If in a nice run. He thought in his mind, wanting to cry only for no tears to fall. Well then, Ram, 2 hours. There is 2 hours until I can confirm your words. And if you lie to me, it won't be pretty. I'll crack you like an egg until I get the information I want. I will smite you with my holy light until I GR. Then, out of the corner of his blank eyes, he noticed a dim, yellow light enter the area from that small opening at the top of the room, slipping through the tight bars like they were not even there. Ren found it hard to tell what it was in his hazy, disoriented state, yet he could not take his eyes nor focus off it as the captain continued his threats ahead of him. Close your eyes. A faint, almost inaudible whisper entered his ear, sounding like a little child, one that felt so odd yet so familiar at the same time. Ren was desperate. He had absolutely nothing to do and nowhere to run. This all could have simply been a figment of his imagination, which was highly likely, yet he still decided to do it. He would grasp onto any shred of hope he had left in his otherwise bleak, gloomy tunnel of death. So, he closed his eyes and put all of his trust in that voice. Hey, are you even listening? Why are you Klaus? Blinding flare. Suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, a bright, blinding flash of light that was so powerful that it penetrated Ren's eyelids despite him still having his eyes closed and reached his now hurting eyes, engulfing everything around him. Ergeg! My eyes! My eyes! Screams of suffering filled his ears, feeling grateful to that unknown voice he now knew as completely real. Luckily, his eyelids provided a coat of protection good enough that once the light disappeared, he was able to once again open his eyes with little to no problems. And there, as he opened his slowly sight that was still blurry and disoriented, he witnessed the sight of the captain and the one man behind him holding their eyes tightly writhing in agony, still screaming like it was the worst pain of their lives. But his attention did not linger there for long as his vision finally became crystal once again. Directly in front of him, he saw a person he never even imagined he would ever see. Luck, Ren blurted out in disbelief. Ren had all but completely forgotten about Luck's existence or simply deemed him as dead. He was only concerned for his own safety at the time after all, and could not care less about Luck, who he had only just gotten to know and almost disregarded as useless or insignificant in his predicament. However, now, seeing the little, cute flying fairy in front of him, he could not be more shocked, as he did not know if he had saved him or had simply gotten him in more trouble than before. Luck, what AR? Before Ren was able to finish his sentence, he was immediately interrupted by Luck, who spoke as he used a small, metallic item previously in his hands to pick the lock at his back, making his bindings abruptly drop on the ground. Chill, my lord. I'll come here to save you. Please follow my lead for once. I'll lead you and tell you how to escape. I've got it all planned. I know you're my leader and master, but please trust me. I promise I will prove myself to you to make up for my previous incompetence. Ren still could not believe his ears. The person who he nearly killed because he thought he was an NPC was talking to him with such loyalty and kindness. There in front of him, he saw a literal light of hope, and he was prepared to do whatever it took to keep hanging on and escape from his living nightmare and inevitable death. He could not help but feel slightly happy for seemingly the first time in forever. Okay, Luck, I trust you. Lead the way. Who? The captain slowly opened his recovering bloodshot eyes, looking all around him only to see that the naked vampire once in front of him had suddenly somehow escaped, and his cries for help seemed to have not been picked up by anyone from the outside. The silent spell seemed to have shot him in the foot. Where is he? His rage continued, one hand over his red eyes, as he looked around to also try and find the other soldier that was in this room alongside him. He was also nowhere to be found, but after he started walking around, he felt some sort of heavy object hitting his feet. What? When he looked down, to his surprise, it seemed to not be a heavy object at all. It was Dreven, the other guard that was supposed to be there, his eyes fully white, dead, bleeding on the ground, completely naked. That was when 2 and 2 clicked in the captain's mind, and the realization of what the vampire must have done became vivid. Slam! Suddenly, the doors to the room were thrust completely wide open, with a panting soldier at the front of it. Behind him, a commotion of massive proportions as the panicked figures of various soldiers were seen rushing towards the exit. Captain! It's a... The soldier at the front of the door, heavily panting, began screaming like a madman, completely unlike how a normal guard was supposed to act. However, before he was able to finish what he had to say, the mad, beyond furious captain interrupted. The vampire escaped. Raise all security and catch him. He disguised himself as a guard. He must be caught at all costs. But, sir, now isn't the time for that. Why is that? How dare you? Are you disobeying orders? Because the village is under attack by the Orobonians, and they have already set the town center on fire. Oh, they way out. Men, move. It's a sneak attack. Protect the people. There was a complete frenzy in the hallway, the ground rumbling and explosions piercing the ears. Like waves, soldiers headed towards the door of the barracks, weapons in hand, ready for anything that came their way. However, out of those many soldiers, there was one that slightly stood out, yet blended in perfectly with the crowd, having a slight limp in his step. Ren, who was wearing guard's armor and a helmet to cover most of his red, glowing eyes, had yet to fully recover all the wounds on his body. And not only that, but his body also felt drained in a certain way that he only had a slight idea about and had never actually experienced himself. He struggled and tried his utmost to follow the crowds and rush to the exit as naturally as possible, yet that was a harder task than he first expected. However, for some reason, that was far from the main focus in his mind as he stared blankly at his gauntlets that bore flesh blood beneath them. I killed a man. I actually just killed a man. The memories of him thrusting his hands through the guard's heart were still fresh in his mind. What should have been truly a frightening experience now that he pondered over it, for some reason, felt too natural. As soon as luck told him to kill the guard and steal his armor, he did as he was told immediately. He had a few initial doubts, but they were instantly swept away like a leaf flowing down a river. Even if those guards did some very inhumane, despicable acts towards him, other than his mother, killing a living, sentient being was something he never imagined or even considered prior. He was unsure if it was simply his panic, desperation, or anger that took over him to make him do what he did. Yet as soon as he got over the initial shock and went to do it, it felt no different than squishing a mosquito. He used his sharp, vampiric nails to pierce through the guard's armor and flesh to reach his heart, feeling the throbbing right around his fingertips as he mercilessly dug into it, ripping it out as he watched the guard shriek and writhe in agony, praying to God and saying his final words all the while his own blood gushed all around him. Ren stared coldly at all of that with no remorse, like he was a bug. He even undressed him completely naked as fast as possible, and he did not feel any disturbance in the slightest. So, why only now was he thinking about his previous actions and not in the moment? Was it his sense of morality kicking in? Thinking back to what he did, he should have felt at least something, right? Had he been a psychopath all along and had no idea? His actions were simply not things any normal man would just nonchalantly be able to do for the first time. After all, at one point, the blood on his body and hands looked so fresh and delicious that he felt an unquenchable urge to bite and lick up every last drop. But due to his panic and Luck's warnings to hurry up, he had no time to feed. At the time, and even now to a great degree, it did not feel morally wrong to do what he did and wanted to do. Was that why his body felt drained? So far, all of his own mechanics had matched up to his in-game race. He was a vampire, and it had been 3 days without any blood for him after all, which never happened to him in the game since he never reached that point. Had becoming a vampire changed more about him than simply his appearance and abilities? Right now he was not sure, but he was certain it would not take long for him to find out. Lord Aliard, are you feeling okay? What's on your mind? I tried to heal you with negative energy spells, but I'm sure it did not stop all the pain. Ren's train of thought was suddenly interrupted by a sound coming from his pockets, snapping him back into reality. He was unsure why those thoughts popped up in his head at times like this. Once again, survival became his top priority as he thrust those thoughts to the back of his mind. "Ya luck, I'm fine. Don't worry about it," he whispered back, still trying to maneuver his way through the hallway, looking for safety. Boom! That was when suddenly a massive explosion hit the side of his barracks all around, causing the ceiling to collapse on top of him and everyone else. Although clumsily, Ren was able to react in time by dodging all of the incoming massive rocks falling from above. He managed to survive, but he could not say the same about many of the other guards who were crushed by boulders, crying in pain behind him, which he ignored in favor of moving on and not wasting time. The way ahead of him that led to the exit of the barracks was completely cut off by mountains and mountains of metals and rocks blocking his way. Now, the only way out was climbing the rubble up. The sky was once again visible to Ren after so long, but it did not harbor the same beauty it did before. It was completely pitch black with a tint of orange, smoke into the horizon, and various magic spells flying around almost like shooting stars. "Oh, my baby, my little baby, you took my baby. Monsters, burn-ness. Put me out. Someone put me out. It hurts. Put me out or kill me. Papa, Papa, wake up, Papa, Papa, phew a cuck, pig, get out of my city and stay away from my wife." Almost like they were previously blocked, his ears suddenly managed to listen to the frightening screams and battle cries of the violence inevitably ahead and what he should expect to see. The once heavenly, fresh air of the outside world was no more, tainted by the smell of burning flesh, and wood that made things feel more and more like the smell of his own world. Using all his energy, he looked in front and scaled the rather extensive wall of rubble ahead of him until he eventually saw a wide view of the entire city. And even he who was in complete panic could not help but stop and watch all of the mayhem happening all around him with a beyond shaky gaze. The rich, vast world that made him nearly shed a tear from its beauty was no more. Instead, it was replaced by a living hell. Plumes of black smoke and ash shrouded the whole battlefield and the burning building's life fog. The streets were dyed a mixture of orange and crimson, riddled with raging flames, organs, blood, and lifeless bodies for as far as the eye could see. He witnessed the sight of people being burned alive, jumping out of their windows in panic and falling dead on the ground in their suffering. Mothers crying and pleading for their lives, tightly holding their children before being mercilessly slaughtered by soldiers who wore similar armor to the ones given to him by Luck, their victims' heads rolling lifelessly on the ground with a startling expression. People were running in the streets, screaming and begging for their lives, only to be completely slaughtered by those same soldiers, their victims' blood spraying in the air before they immediately moved on to their next targets. Soldiers and city guards were fighting in every corner of the village, but it was clear to any onlooker who was truly winning. Ren was no pushover. He had seen many hardships and unquestionable scenes in his life, but nothing came even close to what he was witnessing right in front of him with disgust and many things running in his mind. It was absolutely wild. This was exactly why he never wished to be Ice Skate. It completely set the tone for him about what kind of world this was going to be and what was his new reality. The sight made his stomach turn and his blood boil. Yet, despite all of the atrocities he had just watched being committed right in front of his eyes, for some odd reason, he could not feel a single shred of remorse for any of them. Innocent people were being slaughtered in the most inhumane, disturbing ways imaginable, and he felt absolutely nothing, almost like they were merely cattle sent to the slaughter. At least there were no children dying at the hands of these barbarians. He always found himself staring at the blood splattering all over the air, and at points even ignoring many of the other things until the smell of burning and the sounds of desperate cries of deaths brought him back to everything else. It once again brought into question his own mental thinking in his mind. Hush! Seemingly out of nowhere, a massive ball of fire flew by and nearly skimmed his face, making him shudder and come back to his senses, no longer staring at his surroundings like he was hypnotized. What the fuck do you think you're doing, soldier? Don't just stand there. Go out and protect your people. What about the children in the dungeon? He instinctively blurted, their crying images popping up in his mind. He knew that there was no way that he himself would be able to save them, especially if he wanted to get out alive, but he wanted to know what the guards had planned for them. What did you say? The children? Now is no time to think about the festival, soldier. Go out to defend your people. A man spoke from right beside him, jumping down into the fray with seemingly no fear in his heart. Ren was confused, yet the screams and explosions of the battlefield made him disregard any unneeded thoughts. He took a deep breath and steeled his resolve. He had to find some way to escape the village alive, and the only way that was possible was navigating through this burning hell. He was still undoubtedly scared out of his mind, but his will to survive and adapt were even stronger as he jumped down from the rubble above and into the maze-like streets that he knew would be a nightmare to navigate properly and nearly impossible to navigate safely without being spotted. That was when Ren felt some movements in his pockets. In a time that he least expected, when he thought he was all alone, he was reminded that he had a seemingly fully reliable ally who had his back at all times. My lord, follow me. I've already scouted the entire city and secured the best and safest escape path for us. Suddenly, Luck shot out of his pocket like a bullet and flew in a certain direction to his right, and without hesitation, Ren followed suit as fast as his injured body allowed him. There were still many unanswered questions in his hurting mind, especially towards the confident Luck that seemed to know exactly what he was doing, yet he had no time to ask or ponder over anything as the panic and intensity of the moment overcame his body. As Ren ran through the burning village, the force of the flames around him were beginning to really get to him, despite him never actually making contact with any of it, which slowed him down far more than he expected. This must be a vampire's weakness to fire in action. It's not even touching me. It wasn't like this in the game, either. Ren thought in his mind that bore a mixture of fear and determination as he pushed himself to the limits, just so he could barely keep up with Luck's flawless flying. They avoided all of the intense areas of battle, passing by numerous screaming and begging civilians in the distance without batting an eye until they reached a certain corner. "This way, my lord." Luck flew up and above a small 9-foot pile of debris that was blocking an alleyway and motioned Ren to follow suit. Without hesitation, Ren swiftly yet not so elegantly began scaling the pile of rocks, catching the attention of a few soldiers far away behind him. "Get him! Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!" Ren mumbled in panic as he forced himself to climb even faster. If he still had feelings of his heart, he was certain that it would have been flung out on the ground in front of him. As he reached the top and was about to jump down towards Luck, who was waiting for him, he felt a crushing pain on his skull, startling him. Ding! The impact of the attack pushed him over the edge of the rubble and flung his helmet off his head, making it land and roll far ahead into the alleyway. The fall definitely did hurt, but in his current state and heavy adrenaline, he could not care less. "Follow me." Luck once again began flying in dimly lit alleyways that resembled more like a labyrinth. And, fortunately for him, Luck seemed to be going in the direction where his helmet had landed. He knew that it was essential for him to be able to hide his identity, so wasting a few moments to pick it up was only natural. "Ah! Grandpa, no." However, as he bent down to pick it up, an abrupt, female sound suddenly emerged from his right, an alleyway that led to the back of a store. It was a voice completely unlike all of the other screams. It was one that he recognized without a shadow of a doubt, and made him take the time to turn around and see exactly what it was. "Oh, it hurts. It hurts. Please, we're only simple merchants. We'll give you whatever you want." There, to his complete shock, he witnessed the scene of 6 men surrounding 2 people, ones that he knew all too well. They were none other than Petra and old man Adrian that gave him that ride on the carriage. They were surrounded in a corner. Petra's visage was nearly unrecognizable from all of the burns, ashen wounds on her face that completely blinded her left eye, leaving her solely with her right eye that lost all of its beautiful purple and now simply turned into a dull gray. Her beautiful blonde hair was nearly burnt off, left as a tattered relic of what it once was. Her clothes were all ripped, her right arm completely lost, dripping blood from where it once stood, and streams of tears were running down her frightful yet resilient face. Old man, Adrian was not faring much better. It almost seemed like he had survived running straight into a burning building. His gray hair was no more, and his entire body was nearly completely black and riddled with scars that were clearly seen through his clothes that were barely intact. He sat on the ground, shielding his crying granddaughter with his body that was being abused by the soldiers in front of him. "Stop resisting, old man, and give us what we want." "What? I have no idea what you are talking about. Please spare us. We're just simple merchants, my ass." Ah. Adrian's hands that were previously wide out were both chopped off by lightning-quick sword slashes that left Ren beyond dumbfounded. The soldier's speed and power were beyond immense. All Ren managed to see was a flash. It was almost like the man didn't move at all. Abruptly, both of Adrian's arms fell on the ground and sprinkled blood from where they once were, painting Petra's face, who hid right behind him, completely red in her own grandfather's blood. "Petra, stay behind me. As long as I'm still alive, they will never get to you." He mumbled in a low voice, still standing his ground despite all of his injuries and severed arm. "No, stay away from my grandpa." Yet, that was when he was kicked down by one of the men and was forced into kneeling over his granddaughter, softly smiling at her face despite the struggle, comforting her all the while. "Kid, do you even know what kind of man your grandpa is? I doubt he even cares for you at all. I bet the only reason he's hanging on to you is for the small chance to use you at the festival. You are the initiator, old man. You can't hide it. Where's the Malik? Hand it over." Asterisk off, asterisk, what are you talking about? What festival? Fine, so be it. Then here you die. With a shaky, wide gaze, a frozen Ren sat and watched as one of the soldiers tightly gripped and unsheathed his bloody sword. That was when the crying, shaky, beyond-hurting single right eye of Petra wandered all around her as it eventually grew completely wide, her body trembling even more than before. Aliard, is that you? Please, I beg you, please save us. Save us. Save us. Save us. It seemed like he was noticed by Petra, who stared deeply into his soul with her one remaining eye as she mumbled with all her might, Ren barely managing to pick up on her faint, desperate voice that made his spirit crack in two. A rush of emotions unlike ever before overcame his entire body. He looked at the sight in front of him with his eyes shaking. Yet this time it was not solely out of fear and panic, but anger as well. Even after seeing multiple similar scenes occur right in front of his eyes, for some reason he felt a deep, personal pain in his non-existent heart. Where is he? I saw him go this way. Keep searching. Voices from far away in the distance suddenly entered his ears, and another voice came from in front of him that made him cry even more and his eyes grow even wider. My lord, what's wrong? Hurry, we have to go. There's no time. His brain was torn, considering absolutely everything in the mere fractions of time he had. He sat silent, so many things rushing in and out the war zone of his mind, until he reached the only logical conclusion he could have ended with. I'm sorry. His body shaking immensely, he gazed at Petra's figure and stared deep in her single, gray, desperate eye before looking away with bloody tears, grabbing his helmet off the ground and rushing off behind Luck, who was slightly beginning to panic and grow impatient. I'm sorry, as he slowly began to follow behind Luck. A small, subtle, banshee-like shriek almost calling out to him from the depths of hell entered his ears and sunk down deep into his lurching heart. Monster, I thought Grandpa said you were a nice guy. Ah! That voice was followed by the sound of metal slashing flesh and screams from that exact same corner. He let out a bloody tear once more, closing his eyes and clenching his teeth before shaking his head, looking straight ahead of him at Luck's flying figure with determination and an unquestionable will to survive. His whole life, Ren had always been a logical and rational thinker. Adrian and Petra were as good as dead, and there was nothing he could do about it. Soldiers were following him from behind, and there were 6 men in front of him, one of whom was immensely out of his league to the point that his movements did not register. Especially in his state, fighting them was nothing short of suicide. As he ran away, he heard the girl's frightening scream echo in his head once more as he wore his filthy helmet. Suddenly, he felt a deep pain in his heart and an empty feeling in his stomach as he looked at Luck's back with hazy eyes, struggling to keep up due to his injuries and the patches of fire all around him. He had no idea what that feeling was. Was it regret? No, it couldn't have been. If he were to be thrust into that situation once more, he would have chosen the exact same thing every time. Even if by some miracle he managed to kill the soldiers, in their state, they would not last for long without medical treatment. He would have to escape from the burning village with them slowing him down and painting a target on his back. Luck was clearly panicking and struggling, even with just him following behind. Adding 2 more extremely injured people would be nearly impossible seeing how he was acting. It was to the point that had the guards not even been there, he would have still left them to die. He was no selfless hero, and never had been. He was human. How could he expect to save others when he could barely save himself? At least now, he actually felt something more for them, unlike the other hundreds of people he had seen murdered. Maybe he was not a complete psychopath after all. He still felt pity and emotions for others. Or was it just his mind trying to search for some shred of positivity in his current state? He had absolutely no idea and had no time to ponder over it. He needed to forget about everything for now and focus on what was truly important. Boom! Suddenly, a massive explosion was heard from above him, and in the next instance, rocks began falling down onto his head, which forced him to move faster and push his body further. As he rolled away from the final rock, he heard echoes coming from behind him. Did you hear that? Do you think it's him? Split up and search. No one is allowed to run. The voices seemed to only be getting closer, and Ren's panic was growing even further along with it as he ran behind the flying luck through the damp, yet fiery alleyways. They avoided all of the falling rocks and even needed to take extra turns and scale rubble to get to where they needed to go and where luck was meticulously leading him. That was until they turned a corner and were met by an intersection where a single enemy soldier was patrolling, multiple dead bodies on the ground around him. Shit! Ren inwardly cursed, unable to advance any further, and with the voices behind him still getting louder, he seemed to be trapped. That was until Luck, who was peering over the corner beside him, spoke. Lord, wait until he turns around. I'll push that rock up there to the ground to catch his attention and muffle your footsteps. I know you are no amateur, but remember to aim for the heart. To end it quickly, since we have no time. And before he could get an okay from Ren, he immediately flew away and left him alone. Ren had no time to think or interject, an immense rush of adrenaline flowing through his nerves. He hardened his undead heart and steeled himself for anything as he unconsciously wore the slightly shaky eyes of a predator. Crash. Someone there. There hit the rock, and there was his cue. Although it felt different, he instinctively used some of his previous in-game knowledge and pro movements. Like a shadowy mist and as quiet as a rat. Masked by some of the explosions from the outside, he snuck behind the guard with his slightly extended nails as hard as steel and thrust them deep into his heart. Without being told, as soon as he noticed his opponent's mouth open wide, he instinctively reached his hands over to his throat and slashed to completely remove his vocal cords so he did not scream, making him fall silently dead on the ground with a less than pleasant expression on his face. Plus 50 XP. Level up. This was Ren's second time ever killing someone, and other than it feeling far more natural, it did not differ much from his first one. He stared coldly at the dead body. He just slew on the ground with even more adrenaline pumping through his veins. That was when something entered through his nose, making his eyes instinctively look towards his hands that bore succulent fresh blood. And without even knowing it, like something completely took over his body, he began sucking his hands and licking it up like he was a toddler, savoring every last drop of that delicious substance that tasted so good and invigorated him unlike anything before. Congratulations! You have reached the requirements to unlock the Bloodsucker class. Would you like to unlock it? Yes, not now. As if the message was not even there. As if he was hypnotized, Ren kept on sucking his hands over and over, the taste too good to stop. That was when he completely ran out and his gaze once again shifted towards the soldier and the blood gushing out of his heart. He bent down with piercing red eyes, about to dig into the meal when a massive explosion hit from above him, making rocks fall down towards him. Snapping back to his senses, he rolled away from the rocks that completely crushed the body he was about to feed on before Luck's voice came into his head. Nice thinking cutting off his vocal cords, my lord. Let's go. It shouldn't be much longer. Luck began flying away, the sound of the mayhem and intensity of the battlefield only getting worse from the world outside of this maze of alleyways. Ren followed suit, thinking with shock. Did I just do that? That was oddly satisfying. Whenever killing and blood was involved, he seemed to be almost like a completely different person. Had his in-game experience helped him that much? Was this part of being a vampire? Or had he been a natural-born killer all along and had only just noticed? When he looked up in front of him and noticed the notifications he had missed, he immediately assigned all the stats he gained into agility for obvious reasons and his class point once again into vampire. Although it was minuscule, as soon as he did, he felt that same rush of energy overcome his body like before, and his speed increased, allowing him to better keep up with Luck with his fresher feeling, slightly more rejuvenated body. As for the Bloodsucker class, it was completely invaluable in his eyes. If it was anything like the game, it was a permanent decision that will shape him for the rest of his life, yet he was so confident that he easily chose it anyways without even thinking as to not waste any time. We're all almost there. Luck whispered through the sounds of violence and destruction. The city walls are just up ahead. Have you found him yet? No. Then keep searching. We're almost there. There it is. Come here. I think I hear something. He's right around this corner. Question mark. Where is he? As the soldiers turned the corner, they were surprised to see that there was absolutely no one. Right ahead of them was an intersection leading towards the chaotic main road where the explosions of battle and the screams of soldiers and children alike were still heard. And, splitting off from there, straight ahead of them was a stone tower with a metallic door connected to the village walls. Do you think he left the village or went back into the battle? Should we split up and follow him? There might be a door leading to the outside from that tower. One of the soldiers laughed heartily at the other's suggestion. Doesn't matter. Let's all go back to the main fight. But, sir, don't worry. He's dead either way. If that's the way he's leaving the village, he will be in for a rude awakening from our leader. Inside the dark tower, only lit by Luck's dim, natural light and his own dark vision, Ren was leaning back onto the door, breathing heavily, unable to believe he just made that. It was his first time that he had a moment of peace and quiet where he felt safe to slightly calm his mind and think. According to Luck, the tower he was in had been long abandoned for a reason he was not sure about. So, there should have been no one inside of it. And the key to the locked door was with him in his armor, as the first guard he killed inside the interrogation room possessed one due to his high status in the village. Everything seemed way too convenient. Yet, he had no energy or brain power to question anything as his moment of peaceful serenity was interrupted by the entire tower, shaking from above and underneath his feet. Lord Aliard, this tower is unstable and we need to leave. The soldiers from the outside might have found out that we came in here. We don't have time. Ren took a deep breath of dust-filled air, steeling himself once more as he slowly approached Luck, who was hovering over another metal door. As he twisted the doorknob, it was swung slowly wide open, the sound of the creaking completely muffled by the explosions of the outside. There, in front of him, was a wide, expansive field of high grass greenery that spanned for nearly as far as the eye could see and ended in a forest in the distance. The smoke and ash of the burning village showed masses of smoke floating in the air, which completely blocked out the beauty of the clear night, starry sky he so fondly remembered, reminding him once more of this world's true colors. As soon as the door opened, Luck flew out and motioned him to follow. Crash! The tower shook once more, making him eagerly want to head outside and follow Luck. Yet, as soon as he was about to take a single step outside, he felt a sudden chill running down his spine and fear unlike anything ever before. Like death itself was waiting for him beyond that door as he looked straight ahead with wide-open eyes. My lord, what's wrong? Are you okay? Ren blinked a few times, putting his hands on his unbeating heart and looking at all his limbs with a look of awe, like he was surprised to be still alive. It's nothing. I think the fume's starting to get to me. Let's go. Taking a leap of faith, Ren left and closed the door behind him, feeling immense relief for some odd reason as he crouched down to blend in with the high grass. For the next few minutes, slowly and carefully, Ren crawled after Luck that guided him through the thick grass that did not allow him to see anything. Despite it all being so far safe, he could not shake away the stress and unease in his soul. And his concerns were confirmed when he bumped into several dead bodies along the way. All of them burnt to a crisp with an arrow directly to their heads that bore a terrifying expression. It seemed like other cowardly soldiers also attempted something similar to what they were trying. But even through that all and the potential danger signs, Ren stayed unmoving and pushed forward, choosing to trust Luck, who had yet to let him down so far. That was when they reached the edge of the tall grass. Ahead of them, the grass was no longer long enough to hide. They needed to ensure their safety and secure a path for them to escape that could be possibly risky. So, taking small peeks from the grass, Ren and Luck were ready to look around for potential patrol. However, that was when they heard a loud, arrogant voice enter their ears from the left. Give up. We've got you surrounded, Orebonian scum. Call off your men now if you want to leave here alive. Ren recognized that voice a million times over. It was none other than that nightmare of a captain that tortured him out of information. Hearing his voice once more greatly surprised him. Yet what surprised him even more was what he heard next. Do you really call that a sneak attack? I saw you coming from a mile away. It was a thick, low voice that stabbed deep into the hearts of the masses and demanded the utmost respect. However, the voice was unmistakably female. When Ren looked to where the sound came with a bad feeling in his soul, he witnessed the figures of 30 men wearing village guard armor surrounding two comparably smaller armored females wearing helmets that hid their faces, their body barely able to be made out due to the thick wall of men in his way. Leader, should I take care of them? No, let them be for now. The conversation between the two girls could not help but make the captain laugh out loud. You fools! You're in no position to talk in such a way. Enough chatter. Guards, kill them both. Cut off their heads to show to those barbarians terrorizing our village. Charge! All at once, the men pounced on the two girls like wolves, the sounds of screaming and metal crashing against metal filling the air. My lord, this is perfect. Now is your chance. We can leave while they're all fighting. Let's go. All of a sudden, Luck flew out of the tall grass and into the open meadow, darting towards the forest ahead. And as if instinctively, Ren followed suit. Or at least he tried to. His body would not let him get out of the grass, as he was once again struck with a bad feeling in his heart, his eyes growing wide and shaky once more. It was beyond surreal. My lord, what's gotten into you again? We have no time. Let's go. The panic on Luck's face was evident, and Ren fully well knew why. He clenched his teeth as hard as he could and leapt out of his cover, sprinting at the top speed his still injured legs allowed him. He had no idea why he was thinking or hesitating. This was the only chance he might ever get. No way he was about to give up now that he had gotten so far, and how much he had sacrificed to survive. Frantically, Ren continued sprinting behind Luck with his hazy vision through the field, the polluted light of the incomplete moon shining on his face, and the sound of battle behind him. He could not help but shake off the odd feeling in his heart, yet his adrenaline and will to survive overshadowed all of that. However, before he even reached halfway, a blinding flash of white light engulfed his vision, with the sound of heavy squealing all at once that along with the sound of flesh and blood being cut directly behind him entered his ears. Run, and in addition to him, Luck could both not help but stop what they were doing. Their entire body was shaking faster than a vibrator out of pure instinct. Their eyes grew abnormally wide like they were in some kind of trance. Without a doubt, death was waiting for them right behind. The air felt so thick that he was unable to breathe. His vision that was supposed to be aided by night vision suddenly grew dark. Like an invisible shadowy hand was hovering over his lungs and heart ready to take him out at any second. It was a familiar feeling, yet more severe than anything prior in his life. Was this the same death that he had sensed before? Had it not been a hallucination all along? Without a shadow of a doubt, had his body been normal, his skin would have been completely drenched in buckets of sweat from head to toe, his bowels would have been emptied, and his heart would be pushing the boundaries of his ribcage on its way to explode. Ren was no quitter, yet he knew exactly when to quit and when there was no way in hell out. He was going to die, undoubtedly going to die, yet he did not want to die like some insignificant bug. He wanted to see the face of his killer. His father would never forgive him if he died in such a way. As a coward, taking a gulp of saliva, Ren fought against every fiber of his entire being to turn around, which was far more painful than he expected, as it seemed like it went opposite to everything his body wanted. When he did, his keen, shadowy, determined gaze landed upon the figure of the two girls, a mountain of bodies at their feet from the men who were once standing, burn marks on all of their bodies. Yet, his eyes only fell there for a short time. Above the bodies was where his true focus lied, but not at the taller, fully heavy-armored girl aiming a fiery bow directly at his head. The size and intensity of the flame beyond huge, almost like he was staring at the sun itself. His gaze solely focused on the girl to his left, her armor rather skimpy and revealing with an opening showing off her massive breasts, other armor where it was most necessary. Undoubtedly, just from her body alone, she was the most attractive girl he had ever seen. Yet, that thought did not last for very long. Soon after, his gaze shifted slowly towards her cold, yellow, predator-like eyes shining through the slits of her heavy, metallic helmet. The look in her eyes shook him beyond repair deep down to his very core. It was unlike anything he even conceived could be possible. It was almost like her entire history was tattooed and worn directly into her deadly eyes. Despite her appearance, she was no slut. He could immediately tell. He had no idea how it was even possible to achieve eyes like hers. What kind of horrors did she have to live through? What kind of heartbreaks had she experienced? What kind of hardships did that woman struggle through? It must have all been unimaginable beyond his wildest dreams. In a way, he envied her. She had the eyes of a pure survivor. Was that what it took to survive in this world? Compared to her gaze, power, and might, he was absolutely nothing. He had never felt so insignificant in his entire life. He now wondered how those guards were even able to meet her gaze without running away. Were they that much more resilient than him? Had he always been so pathetic? No, he could not allow himself to fall in such a way, scared beyond his mind. He wanted to survive. More than anything, he wanted to live. And if in this world, the minimum requirement was to meet the gaze of this woman, then so be it. It would be better to start now than never. Even if his entire body was rejecting him and wanting to explode and curl up into a little ball awaiting his death, he could not allow himself to do it. He endured through all the pain and mental turmoil and met her gaze head on. In his mind, those eyes of hers were like the entire new world, and if he could not even meet her gaze, then surviving another day would have been completely meaningless. The woman's hard, cold stare suddenly grew wide, looking at her opponent's deep, blood-red eyes that stared back at her. It was almost like looking into a reflection. Put your bow down. Let him live. She could not help but slightly smile at the sight of that clearly inhuman man for some odd reason as she walked away, heading towards the burning village ahead. Her subordinate could not believe her own ears, turning around to face her leader who was turning away, her bow still drawn. But leader, we can't leave this weed unplucked. We must just obey your orders and follow me to the village. Don't waste your energy on him. We have much more pressing matters to attend to. With a tough look on her face, she gave in and dropped her bow beneath her knees and unlit her fire spell. Very well, leader. You have never once been wrong. I will follow you to the ends of the earth and back if I must. She spun around and followed directly behind her leader, walking over all the dead bodies and heading towards the burning inferno ahead of them, leaving the fleeing, red-eyed man free to run into the forest. Heavily breathing with wide, trembling eyes, Run and an extension luck were both frantically running through the dark, depressing forest. The noises of howling beasts filled their ears from every direction, sounded more like hungry demons. Ren tripping and hurting as he traversed the dangerous, spiky terrain of the somehow dark forest that seemed to have glowing eyes looking at him from every direction. Yet, in his already injured, frantic, and chaotic state, that was the absolute last thing in his mind, as there was something far more scarring and pertinent engulfing his entire focus. That was when he heard the first voice in seemingly forever enter his ears, that of a little boy. "Lord Aliard, come here." It took him a second to remember who that voice belonged to before the answer struck him immediately in the head as he followed Luck in a deep, dark cave away from the outside forest. There, for the first time in a long time, Ren sat down leaning back on a rock, blankly looking out into the sky outside the cave with half-dead eyes, and began to think, finally properly taking everything that had happened to him that day. Yet, the only thing on his mind was that staring contest he did with that woman. They were eyes that no doubt would be forever branded into his mind. It was by far the hardest, most painful thing he had ever done in his whole life. Nothing even came close. That was the moment that pushed him over the edge. Not waking up in a dungeon, half dead and naked with every bone broken. Not being tortured by holy light in an interrogation. not seeing thousands of innocent villagers being mercilessly slaughtered. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. However, when he thought about if it was more impactful than his father's death, he was not able to allow himself to say it. Her gaze. It was like staring into an endless void filled with nothing but grief, death, and despair. That girl. He had no idea how she was living with such pain and demons residing in her soul. She was a survivor from birth. That was what it took to survive in this new world. And even if he only succeeded to match her gaze for a few seconds, he still managed to do it in the end. It was an incredible, self-validating experience. If he had failed, he was not sure how he could even live with himself and simply accept himself as a weak, cowardly boy who would go nowhere in life. He could not help but softly smile, unsure how he was even alive, but right now he did not care. He had been considering things for a long time now, and he had come to many conclusions. Growling. That was when another sound entered his ears, something other than his own panting and the howling beasts of the outside woods. It was the sound of his own stomach. Ren was a vampire, so by nature, he did not require any nutrients other than blood. Yet even still, there he felt hungry for some odd reason despite knowing he did not need it. It must have been his human nature and instinct he had yet to shake off, which must also explain why he was relying on breathing as well. His mental turmoil was so great that he only just noticed that he was on the verge of dying. He could not take it anymore. He needed food. He needed blood. Slowly, standing, his nose picked up on something deeper into the cave. "My lord, where are you going?" He heard the silhouette of a serious yet still shaky voice enter his ears. But it was completely filtered out like everything else in his hazy mind. There, as he walked further and further into the cave, his dark vision flickering in every now and then, he forced and pushed his body forward. That was when he picked up on the sound of snoring, which made him know he was going the right way. And not too long after, following his nose and his ears, he came across a sleeping figure of a baby bear, the flickering of his dark vision revealing its lime green color and what seemed to be a smile on his face. Ren had always appreciated animals and the very few that did survive back in his world. Yet, now, in the face of his own survival, that admiration was no more. In front of him, the baby bear looked like nothing but a steak. A juicy, blood-filled steak, slowly ducking down with his piercing red gaze. He went to go biting at its neck, only for his eyes to suddenly turn soft contemplating what he was about to do. However, that was when in that instant, he shook those thoughts away and the pure look of a predator returned to his eyes. "Survive. I must survive," he mumbled to himself in his subconscious as he bit into the bear's neck, making him struggle and let out a piercing, pain-filled cry. Yarrrggggrgr. Yet, even through the struggle, Ren did not falter nor bat an eye as the sweet, less than delicious blood began entering and filling his system. It did not taste even half as good as that of humans. If anything, it felt almost disgusting, yet it was more than enough to do its job to refuel his body. The more he sucked and bit, the more and more the baby bear's screaming and squirming that echoed throughout the entire cave began to quiet down, and the more rejuvenated he felt, and the more and more his dark vision began to return to him, making the previously dark cave clear once more. Plus 5 XP. That was when at one point he had stopped gaining energy and the bear stopped screaming. Ren removed his bloody fangs from the baby bear's neck and simply looked at its shriveled, bloodless corpse like it was simply meat, his stomach still growling. He had tasted the bear's flesh as he bit into it, and it was still less than pleasant. His palate had yet to adjust to raw meat, so he needed to cook it up. With cold, distant eyes, he picked up his dead prey and looked back towards the entrance of the cave. If someone had told him a few days ago this is where he would be at, as a wildly hated race, fighting for survival in the wilderness after running into unquestionable pain and death over and over again, forced to eat and drink human blood and kill baby animals to survive, he would have simply laughed it off as a sick joke as the situation seemed too unreal. He would have never imagined himself doing anything like that. But now, this sick, cruel joke was no joke at all, but his new reality. He could not help but laugh at himself. Had he grown soft from all the years of peace he had been enjoying? If this was what it took to survive, then so be it. If he had to throw away some of his humanity, then so be it. He was not even human anymore after all. He needed to throw away what he deemed as useless and could only hinder him and leave the important. Aliard. That was only a cool name he had wanted to call himself, yet never saw himself as in reality. He had been somewhere similar before in his youth. Now all he needed to do was tap back into that place long lost. From today onwards, he was Ren, yet Ren no longer. The ignorant Ren should have died as soon as he entered his new life. He never had anyone holding his hand his entire life. Like he always did, he needed to evolve and adapt to his new reality. So, Aliard. Yes, from today forward, he will be Aliard. Deep inside the cave, unnoticed from the outside, the sound of crackling filled the otherwise somber, windy air. And from that crackling was a fire that lit up the otherwise dark, damp cave and gave off a smoky, succulent, meaty smell that nearly reached the outside forest. On that lit flame were two pieces of meat completely lacking blood, one much larger than the other, suspended from wooden, rotating sticks. Around the lit fire, holding these branches of wood, were two figures, calmly sitting down on opposite sides, waiting for their food to finish. An armored pale man with white hair, bloody fangs, and deep red piercing eyes, and a little flying naked fairy with purple hair and wings. Slightly off to the side of them were two dried bodies completely devoid of any blood, bite marks on the neck. One was of a small, lime-green bear, and the other one looked almost the same, only much larger and more ferocious. Parts of their fur were skinned off, and chunks of their meat were removed, which was now probably on the fire. Should be about done now. Have a taste. Aliard spoke, calmly removing his massive slab of meat from the fire. Oh, don't mind if I do. With a smile, Luck lifted his own much smaller slab of meat off the flames and dug in. My lord, this is delicious. What was in front of Aliard did not look at all appetizing. However, Luck's reaction seemed to have slightly elevated his expectations. However, as he bit into the meat, it was exactly as he expected. Disgusting, he thought at the back of his mind, yet he still chewed down and ate it with no visible complaints. It seemed like his taste buds were still used to high class, at least seasoned human food and not wild bear. Yet he was certain he would get used to such things in due time. My lord, what you did out there was amazing. I couldn't even move against those two ladies, but you scare them off with your stare, and you're far from full power. Don't think about it too much. I did what I had to survive. Aliard took another bite of his meat before the sudden realization hit him about Luck's words. Far from full power, you say? How do you know that? Do you know what my full power is? Luck stood still, deep in thought, not taking another bite of his meat. I don't know. I just had some sort of feeling, like you were much stronger before we came to these strange lands. Me too, actually, now that I think about it. Aliard sighed at the response he was expecting. It seemed like the amnesia was truly affecting him, yet not to a full degree. In many ways, Luck was Aliard's savior. Yet, that did not stop him from questioning and doubting him despite all that he had done so far being good. Let me ask you a different question. Why are you so loyal to me? So far, I've done nothing to warrant your respect. There, just like before, there was another long pause of silence, the wind crackling the fire slightly more before he finally spoke. I really don't know. Like I told you, I almost don't remember anything. It's hazy. I don't know who I am or where I came from. All I know is that I am Luck, a fairy, and you are, or were Balls, my vampire master. It's hard to explain. It's like we've gone through thousands of adventures over and over again. A lot of repeats, yet I can't remember exactly what they are. I just feel like I have a deep-rooted connection with you. Now, it was Aliard's turn to sit and ponder. But the more he thought, the more his mind came back to the same conclusion that only served to give him more hints, yet confuse him even more. This Luck seemed to truly be the NPC he always knew. And he seemed to possess some recollection of their adventure within the game. It seemed like his characteristics, flavor text, along with his loyalty, had transferred along with him and come to life. What was truly worrisome was if he had ever done anything bad to Luck back when he was an NPC, and if so, would he remember and begin to hate him if the amnesia were not there? Had the amnesia saved him? Hey Luck, you did great back in the village. It almost seemed like you had everything planned. What did you really do, and why did you come to save me? That was when the confused, gloomy look on Luck's face turned bright as he smiled and puffed his chest out in pride and a hint of embarrassment. I saved you because we were a team, of course, but it was my fault you were in that situation in the first place. Aliard really had the urge to lift his eyebrow up in confusion, yet he decided to stay quiet to listen to what Luck had to say. If it weren't for me stupidly getting injured, you wouldn't have been forced to go to that village to get me healing in the first place. I truly apologize. Oh, it's really no big deal. Aliard waved it off. Thanks a lot, my lord. Aliard didn't know what to say other than to just roll with what Luck claimed. He was unsure if he simply thought that he could have dodged the fireball, or he was burnt so badly that he had forgotten what happened. I'm sure you already knew that we fairies regenerate fairly quickly. After I was unconscious, I suddenly woke up in a shaky world, and the next thing I knew, I was in your bouncing pockets. I chose not to scream and panic as I heard the voices of guards outside and quickly assessed the situation, realizing what had happened. So, I escaped from your pocket when the voices were distant, and I felt that there was no one watching and flew up to see where I was at. There I saw your unconscious body at the foot of a barracks and in the middle of the village. And from that moment forward, I knew I had to get you out. So, I came up with a plan. From the ways the guards were treating you, it was clear that they hated you yet didn't want to kill you, and I used that to my advantage. So, the first thing I did was swoop down and cast my sleep powder on you to keep you sleeping and not immediately killed or tortured as soon as you woke up. I explored the entire village and took note of everything I saw until a sudden plan hit me. So, I explored the area around where our previous cave was, and I managed to locate those same bandits or soldiers that we saw earlier that day. And from the looks of it, it seemed like they were headed towards that same village you were in. So, using my amazing estimation skills, I managed to predict when they would arrive. And in those days, I snuck inside the prison, which was much harder than you would expect, and cast my sleep powder on you, even more to keep you sleeping until the time was exactly right. That was also when I spent time to think of the best escape route and plan for when I get you out still. You still had to be the one to save us both. Luck took a small pause to chuckle at his comment before continuing. However, in the end, when the time came, my calculations were slightly off, so I had to insight something in those bandits to make them speed up a bit. It was really risky, and I barely managed to make it out alive. That was why I was a little late to help you. And you know the rest since we lived through it. Aliard, who was really impressed and thankful, suddenly raised an eyebrow, interrupting him. What exactly did you do to them? Oh, it's really nothing, my lord. He laughed in an upbeat tone. Aliard could not help but take notice of Luck's attitude. Unlike him, Luck seemed to have been accustomed to life such as this and was tougher than he expected. However, he also did notice how he always liked to stay positive yet not naive when the time came to it. It was a breath of fresh air in his otherwise gloomy perspective on life. Luck really went that far just to help him. He could not help but feel warm on the inside, hearing how deeply he planned and endured for his sake. There was no reason for Luck to save him, yet he did it anyway. It seemed like he truly did care about him and felt some sort of trust. It was definitely more than anyone would have done for him in real life for an incentive other than money. Hey Luck, thanks for all of that. It must have been tough. It really means a lot. Aliard casually spoke with a smile, eating a large chunk of his bare meat with his eyes closed. Oh, but you were only in trouble and suffered because of me. It was the least I could do. There is no need to thank me, my lord. Call me Aliard. Luck's eyes suddenly grew wide, almost like he wasn't able to believe his ears. Lord Aliard? He asked, only leading to the man in front of him to smile and finally open his eyes. No, just Aliard. I'm getting tired of hearing my lord this and my lord that. It really does get annoying. So, just call me Aliard. Luck looked completely stunned with a hint of nervousness on his face as he looked down with slightly rosy cheeks. Okay. Aliard. And no. I'm sorry, my lord. I just can't. Why, you're far too kind. I'm gonna go out to get more firewood. Bye. Luck's flying figure rushed out of the cave, leaving the smiling and still eating Aliard alone. I had a feeling that wasn't gonna work. He calmly mumbled to himself, taking another bite of bear. The cave was quiet and peaceful, nothing but the sound of crackling flames in his ears. It gave Aliard time to himself to ponder over what had just happened. What relationship did this new world have to the game? Were they connected? It gave Luck, previously a blob of data and numbers, actual, real-life emotions, thoughts, and independent action. He was alive. What kind of world was this? So far, it did share several mechanics and spells as the game, only altered to match the realistic aspects. That was what he was now basing his world knowledge off of. How was he transferred? Who transferred him? Was he the only one? Why was he here? Was there a purpose? Was this world a simulation? Game? Reality? He had absolutely no idea the answer to any of those questions eating at the back of his mind. All that he knew was that everything around him, his pain, his own flesh and blood felt real, and that's all he needed to know to survive. Yet, that did not stop his ever-growing thirst for answers. For now, he disregarded those thoughts. He did not have enough information to come to a definitive answer, and all he did by thinking about it was confuse himself even more and just run around in circles. He was certain at least some things would reveal themselves later on. That was when he remembered that he had leveled up from killing the mother bear and needed to assign his stat points. Stats. Name, Balls Deep 69. Race, Vampire. Level 3. Available stat points, 5. Available class points, 1. Stats. HP 6. MP 7. PHY. ATK 7. Mag. ATK 7. PHY. Def 5. Mag Def 5. Agility 11. Special 7. Resist 5. Seems like my name hasn't changed. At least as long as I say my name as Aliard out loud, this shouldn't really matter, he sighed to himself before taking a good look at his stats. Despite all that he had went through, Aliard knew he had to stay calm with a level head. He had been a top pro player for a really long time and knew the game and the mechanics like the back of his hands. Yet, assuming the similarities between this world and the game to be true, now, he needed to use that knowledge in ways he never thought that he would, and assign his stats in a way that he usually didn't. There were no such thing as glitches. He had to keep in mind that the world was real and it was no game, so he might have to build his stats, skills, armor, weapons, and abilities slightly or possibly very different from what he was used to. The strength of his enemies won't be dictated by areas. There is no such thing as Area or Region 1, where enemies were level 1 to 10, and Region 2, where enemies range from 10 to 25. It was now a normal world with normal people of all strength. He was no longer the entire focus of the world, and enemy strength, along with everything around him, did not progress with him. For now, he was extremely weak. Getting his body stronger was his top priority. He was fragile, and not because he was a glass cannon, it was because he was simply built like glass. There was no cannon there. Special, the stat that was extremely useful for vampires, boosting everything that was not affected by the other stats, almost like a luck stat but slightly different, and resist that served to counteract certain weaknesses, such as even sunlight, needed to take a back seat for now until he was comfortable that he wouldn't be taken out by one hit and wouldn't have the attack potency of a wet noodle. So, keeping all of that in mind, and assuming that magic users were less common than weapon users, he assigned his 5 available stat points as such. 2 in HP equals 8. 2 in PHY. Def equals 7. 1 in PHY. ATK equals 8. All of his stat point distribution had a purpose for a build that he had in mind. A build that he had only used once, finding it to be his style, yet never using it again due to all the other ones that involved glitches and exploits that were better. Next was his class point that he needed to assign. And after not a lot of thinking, he assigned it into Bloodsucker, bringing it up from level 1 to 2, activating its benefits of better, more efficient bloodsucking. And In the meantime, he scrolled down and carefully read through his stat sheet to see if what he had done so far had changed the game system in any way for what he remembered. That was when he came across one part that made his eyes almost fall off of his head and roll to the ground. Stalker's gift, winky face. Had this always been there? Ha 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 ha. He could not help but break out into laughter. What does this even do? Is this some sort of joke? It's confirmed. I knew it. Someone really is fucking with me. Was it that voice that spoke to me in that void? His laughs echoed throughout the entire cave until they suddenly came to a halt, replaced by slow breathing. With a smile, he ate his final slab of meat before standing up and strolling towards the exit of the cave, deep in thought. He did not know how he was supposed to feel, whether or not he should be out for some stupid revenge against some entity whose intent was unknown and powers were in all likelihood way beyond his reach. But the answer quickly struck him as soon as it was asked. Of course not. For now, he disregarded this stalker of his and kept them engraved in the back of his mind. He would first need both power and many answers to choose what he needed to do. And, for now, power was the first thing on his list in order to survive in this dark world, and possibly even thrive. He was prepared to do anything. As he exited the cave, the beauty of the outside world once again came into view, unhindered by his previous frantic fear. It was truly fascinating, seeing the endless expanses of green and lush wildlife, and the beauty of the nearly pitch-black, clear, starry sky. The fresh wind breeze hit his face, allowing him to once again get a puff of that fresh air. He was still truly lost for words despite knowing the other, uglier side of this new world. Was this all worth it? To leave his previous calm, rather peaceful in comparison life, to be in such a world where he had to suffer and fight for his life to survive? He was unsure if he was simply lost in the moment, but most of him felt like it was indeed a nightmare. Yet, a small part of him felt it to be a blessing. It was truly an odd feeling. He then shifted his vision to his right, where old man Adrian told him the next human stronghold was located, this time a city instead of a village. And he needed more strength before he went there. He indeed had much planned. As he looked up into the sky, he noticed small signs of future sunrise, and although he wouldn't die in sunlight, he would rather not get the debuff and die to beasts instead. So he had to get his training in before then wade out into the cave once again. That was when abruptly, Aliard's focus and attention were immediately taken away from the sky and brought right in front of him. And right after that roar, Luck's darting figure was seen flying through the bushes with a panicked look in his eyes. My lord, I'm sorry. Help! It's Papa Bear. He's chasing me. Breathing heavily with sweat running down his face, Luck flapped his chipped, slightly ripped wings and dashed behind Aliard. And, not too long after, another roar was heard along with ruffling in the bushes, only for a lime-green, red-eye bear to emerge standing tall on his hind legs, showing his sharp, ferocious teeth. "Ah shit, here we go again." There, the monster in front of him that dwarfed him like an insect roared, heavily breathing with its red eyes looking at the cave it once called home and at the nervously smiling man underneath it. Although she was comparably smaller, Aliard had faced the mother bear with little to no difficulty. Despite his current lack of levels, skills, and spells, he was confident of winning. He knew all of its ticks and weak points, and could easily take advantage of its rage and frenzy brought upon by him, taking refuge in its own home. He had to use what he had in his small arsenal to win, and with a piercing glint in his bloody eyes, he stared down the bear in front of him, taking up a stance with no side moving an inch, as Aliard prepared himself to do the only viable move he could. Run. Like the wind, Aliard immediately bolted from his place, even further fueling the bear's outrage as he roared once more, closely following him from behind. And why, Lord? What are you doing? What's the plan? Are we giving up? Luck, who was struggling to follow behind him, screamed in a jittery voice, clear fear on his face as he looked back at the bear that was gaining ground. Well, I can't just cut it down and burn it to bits like the mother. But, from what I learned fighting it, I have a plan. Oh, please tell me. I'll follow your lead. Rower, with glowing red eyes and seemingly no care in the world, the bear behind them was ravaging through the entire forest. It was not even bothering to evade the trees as he tore them down like simple sticks in his path, yet they did still admittedly slow him down considerably, enough for Aliard to somewhat manage to keep ahead. The few animals that were in the forest instantly shrieked and quivered in fear, fleeing as far away as possible when they got even remotely close to them. Just from that, he was able to determine that this bear was in all likelihood the apex predator in this forest, and far stronger than even he had first imagined. So you got that? Luck, are you sure it's gonna work? Yeah, I'm certain. Trust me, I've done this thousands of times in the past. Aliard smiled, finding it hard to breathe, and after a few minutes of more running than he had ever done in his entire life, he found exactly what he was looking for, a place that Luck had seen while he was exploring the forest. There, directly in front of him, was a hill that had a steep, rocky cliff, and in that cliff was a small cave only fit for the size of a human or a relatively small animal. As he approached the final stretch towards the tiny cave, the creature's grunting, roaring, and ground-shaking footsteps got ever so closer behind him to the point that he could feel its heavy breath on his back. And, seemingly at the last second, Aliard jumped and rolled into the cave, diving into it as the bear nearly bit off his head. Crash! The entire side of the hill shook like an earthquake, rocks and dust falling from right above him to the point that he was afraid that the cave was going to collapse on his head. The bear had lost itself in its blinding frenzy and crashed directly into the side of the cliff at top speed as it was unable to fit into the tiny hole where Aliard laid. Garbarar! It let out an ear-splitting cry of agony that shook his eardrums. That cry was then followed up by another small tremor in the hill that led to the sound of rolling and collapsing, a multitude of crashing sounds coming from the outside, along with another cry of pain. GAWWWWWWKKKKRRRKRKRK. It was more like a barrage of clashes, like something outside was raining rocks tumbling from the sky, which when he looked out at the exit of the cave, seemed to be exactly the case. It caught Aliard completely by surprise, as he did not have such a thing planned. Yet, he was not complaining. When he looked back, he noticed that the cave was not deep at all. If anything, it was more like a hole in a wall than an actual cave. Once that bear shook the hill slightly more, the entire roof of his hiding spot was going to tumble and come crashing down on his head. However, luckily for him, hiding in the cave until the bear left was not part of his plan. The bear's cry still in his ears, as quiet and as brisk as he could muster. Aliard darted out of the cave, noticing the bear's pain-filled, bloody, agonizing figure as it held its paws over its face. It was clearly in no position to retaliate against him and a perfect opportunity for him to flee. However, this time, he was not going to be running away. No, this time he was fighting back, slowly but surely, with his fairly low stats. He was making his way up towards the side of the hill, using every ounce of energy in his body. He had to make it up before the bear regained its senses. And there, once he made it on top of the tall hill, he looked down with an unstable, wide-open gaze over the edge of the cliff's dizzying heights, the bear's still agonizing figure down below. His plan sounded sane in theory. He had seen this sight so many times in Rebirth, yet this one felt far different. This was all real, and the possibility of death was looming over his head like a guillotine. He tightly gripped the handle of the bloody soldier's blade on his waist, still shaking as he looked down at the massive drop below that felt akin to jumping from a 3-story building. GRROAORR. The bear roared once more, removing its hands from its eyes and bleeding head. However, as soon as it removed its paws, it was met by the flying figure of a certain glowing fairy. Blinding flare. RROARR. The bear roared once more. The flash of blistering light was mere centimeters away from its sights, and it was more than enough to once again put it in a daze with its hands firmly planted on its eyes. My lord, it's time. Finish him off. The plan was going smoothly so far. Luck had done his part, and it was now all up to him. His palms that bore non-existent sweat tightly grasped the hilt of his sword, even tighter, and with a rather disturbingly wide smile and a nervous chuckle, he took the plunge. Moving his previously unmoving, reluctant legs, he jumped down the cliff, unsheathing his sword in midair and aimed it down at a very specific spot on the frantically moving beast below. And in that moment, the reality of the situation once again settled in. Unlike every other time, this was all real. If he missed, it was all over. As his body was suspended in midair, the familiar, warm feeling of the ground nowhere to be found other than 10 meters below him, he felt the guillotine of death slowly approaching his head. That was when his smile grew even larger as he felt something overcome his entire body like autopilot, a feeling so familiar, yet unfamiliar at the same time. It was almost like forgetting and suddenly remembering how to brush his teeth. With a shaky gaze and a smile on his face, adrenaline completely overtook his body as he was completely unbound from the shackles of both his fears and the ground. It was unlike anything he had felt in his entire life as he began hurling towards the earth like a comet, the wind hitting him on every inch of his exposed skin, his sword pointed down in front of his body. D-R-A-O-A-O-A-A-R-R-R. Before he even knew it, that sword pointing down was plunged meters deep into the beast's weak spot, exactly where it had rammed its head into that cliff. He was unsure how he succeeded and managed to get this far, and he had no time to think about it, as he was focused on nothing but killing the beast and his own survival. Blood began gushing out of the bear's head like a fountain. Aliard opened his mouth to savor some of the taste as the bear continued flailing its head around, trying to get off whatever was twisting and digging that stabbing pain deeper into its head. Fuck, why is it not dying or giving up? There is a sword in its brain. What is this thing? Aliard inwardly cursed as he struggled to keep a hold of his sword and not get immediately flung against the side of the cliff. The bear seemed to be giving its final, last-ditch effort before its death, its blinding rage and frenzy extended to such lengths. My lord, you can do it. I believe in you. He heard a pain-filled yet determined voice echo from behind, charging him with even more vigor. Like a wild beast looking for nothing other than its survival, his eyes grew wide, with visible redness expelling out from the edges. He clenched his fist hard and gritted his teeth to the point of hearing cracks from his mouth. Using every single ounce of his being, blood popping out of his bulging veins, he grabbed on the hilt of his sword with only one hand, digging it as far as he could while he freed the other one. Lifting it high up in the air, a red glint emerging from his palms and fingertips, the glow slowly growing bigger and bigger. With the bear's increasingly wilder shaking, keeping a grasp on the metal hilt was growing to be impossible. Yet, he pushed himself beyond the impossible, withstanding all the pain. His hands grew numb, as he could no longer feel his broken body. It was to the point that his grip had gotten so bad that all the skin on his hands was all gone, now nothing but rotten flesh and blood. But enduring all that grief was for this one moment, as he released all the anger and pain that he had kept bottled up until now, thrusting his glowing hand forward at the creature's head with everything his breaking body could muster. Fury ball.